Township. We will address that when we get there. In the meantime, just to give people a few more minutes to line up and get here, we'll call us to order. We do have a consent agenda, which is the minutes from our last police and fire meeting. Normally, the chair of that board, Dodie, would call for it, but since this is joint with the council, she asked me to call for a vote. So, police and fire board, any comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Or is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, there's a motion by Ken. Is there a second?
A second.
Is that Don?
Yep.
Okay. So motion by Ossendorf, seconded by Don Wiener. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. That motion carries. All right, this one then is for the entire council and the board. One of the things that I discussed with Jennifer Welling earlier today is potentially developing some public hearing guidelines that just help govern the order of speaking, things like that, setting forth expectations. Those are found on page 2 of our updated agenda. I'll sort of hit the highlights, and then we can discuss them further and take a vote on whether or not we approve them for tonight. Reason we need to vote to approve is they're not in our bylaws. This is something that Jen and I discussed, and we will probably put into the revised bylaws for council to consider. Basically just asking everyone to sign in, speak from the podium, tell us their name and address, and then at least initially we're going to limit comments to 3 minutes or less. And that's just to make sure that we get through everyone in a timely manner. We can circle back if there's a lot of leftover. At the end of the comments, we won't be engaging in a debate, depending on time. It'll just be a thank you for your comments, then we'll come back and address all questions. Tarek is going to keep a running list of questions. Kristen's taking notes as well, so we'll come back for questions at the end. Any thoughts on that? Or is there a motion to approve that or approve a revised version?
I'll make the motion to approve the city council public hearing guidelines and include them in the council bylaws and rules of order.
I have a motion by Soini. Is there a second on the bylaws, or on the guidelines, excuse me?
Second.
Seconded by Thielen. Thank you. Any further discussion on those? I'm just going to wait for the microphone to settle into whatever home it's in.
His fault.
All those in favor of adopting the guidelines indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None? Carries. Right. We have a couple other things on our agenda here. We have parking at the fire hall and elementary school. I had a chance to talk to Andy Soini prior to tonight's meeting just about how long that discussion might take. We're at 6:03. There's no way we're having that conversation in 2 minutes. So we're going to come back to that after our public hearing. Anyone's welcome to stick around for that as well. Otherwise, I'll just hit on the informational. On page 5 of the original packet is a copy of the grant application submitted by Chief Wagner and I for the DARE program, Night to Unite and Shot with a Cop, applied to community giving and the Painesville Community Foundation through community giving for the endowment or the grant application that they have, hoping that that could help offset the lost revenues from the golf tournament that we're not able to do this year. So at our last meeting, we had talked about finding ways of fundraising. Hopefully this can help support that endeavor. I also had some really good conversations with Randy Schaefer from the Community Foundation about long-term fundraising for these events. And based on that, I think we should probably look at inviting him to our May or our June police and fire meeting and get some long-term strategies on how we can do and line that up. So, with that, our next police and fire meeting will be May 24th. I'm now just killing time until that clock in the back says 6:05, because it inevitably happens where we call it to order and somebody walks through the door. So, trying to get there. Chiefs, any unusual calls that we should discuss?
Nope. We had our every 4-year mock crash today at the high school, so if anyone is wondering what that was, that's what it was.
How'd that go?
It was good.
Huge success, I think.
Yeah. So I think
Staff did a great job with their acting and just the students reacted real well. I think at that point they kind of kept their attention for the whole what do we want to call it, scenario.
Good.
So
All right.
kudos to the SAD group, they did a great job, so.
And just so that I'm confirming that I'm right, and we know it for the minutes, SAD is S-A-D-D, right?
Correct.
Yeah. All right, so then it is 6:05, so we'll recess our business meeting and open our public hearing. We have a number of people here. I'm just going to go through our order of business. We've opened our public hearing. I'm going to turn it over to Chief Wagner in a few minutes to talk about what we're discussing. Then we'll open it up for public comments. I'd ask people to be prepared to talk in the order that they signed in. Kristen, would you do me a favor and grab the sign-in sheet? After that, after we hear from anybody who wants to talk to us, we will certainly follow up and answer any questions that came up. If time allows, we'll have 10 minutes for follow-up, public comments and questions, and then we will adjourn and get back into our business meeting. Thank you. So before we call for public comments or anything, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming here tonight and taking the time to share your thoughts with us. We appreciate hearing from all of our residents to help guide us as we decide the issues that affect us all. To help maintain decorum and encourage everyone to participate and feel involved, we just ask that you sign in. So if you haven't done that, please just go to the back of the room and sign in. When you're speaking, we have a podium there. We ask that you go there to speak, not because we want to put anyone on the spot. There's a microphone, and we need to be able to hear you. It's easier for those of us in the room to hear, but the recording, if you remember, we had an interesting storm season last spring, and we're waiting for our cameras to be fixed due to a lightning strike. So we're struggling with the limited technology we have, and it's important that we use the microphone. Otherwise, we ask that you just state your name and address a little bit slowly, take a deep breath. It helps you get set up, but it also makes sure that we know who you are, where you're from, and that we're hearing you correctly. We'll limit it to 3 minutes or less. If we get close to that 3-minute mark, I'll just ask you to start wrapping it up. If time allows at the end, we'll come back. Once you speak, I'll just acknowledge, thank you for your time and for coming. We'll keep a list of questions. We'll circle back to everything at the end. We're not going to engage in a dialogue as you're presenting. That's not because we're not listening. It's not because we don't care. It's just to keep the meeting moving along. It's too easy if we get into a dialogue, everyone turns into 20, 30 minutes, and next thing you know, it's 4 o'clock tomorrow morning, and we're not home yet. So that's why I'm not trying to be offensive when I say thank you, please sit down, we're on to the next. We will come back. We're just trying to make sure we can hear from everyone. Again, I thank you all for being here. As we get started, I'll just start by saying, I'll give a brief overview. To my right is the Police and Fire Advisory Board. This is a new committee started last year by the City Council. Role of that committee is to discuss with the chiefs, the fire and police chief, their day-to-day operations, how things are going in their departments, help guide them, make decisions on things they might do better, also to serve as sort of a stopgap, so to speak. It's easy for people to complain about various things that the police departments are doing. Our role is to sort of help and guide those things along, field complaints, look at things appropriately, and provide accurate information as we can. We're here tonight I'm a member of that board. The rest of these are all members. They're all community members here in town. Which lives out in the township, of course, is also township supervisor. To my left are members of the City Council, minus the gentleman sitting next to Gene. Tarek is our city administrator here. So we are the City Council, and we'll take a vote on things. Purpose here tonight is to basically discuss, and Paul Wagner will give us some more information, but to discuss what role does the City of Painesville want to continue taking in responding to calls for police response out in Painesville Township. And for that, we're not talking about active patrolling. We're not talking about going out there and driving around. We're talking about when our police department gets a call from Stearns County Dispatch saying, hey, we need you to go respond to this call, and there's going to be a variety of reasons why that might happen. Chief will talk to you about why that is, but when that call comes in, do we say, yep, we're on our way, or do we say, I'm sorry, that's not our jurisdiction, that should be something that the Sheriff's Department's going to do. It is not to say that if somebody's in a life or death situation, I think that's going to be totally different from responding to an alarm call somewhere. or a rowdy person up at Shady's who they're asking to be escorted out. That's going to be different from somebody who's in an active domestic. So with that, I just wanted to give the broad overview. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Chief Wagner.
So just generally to keep this short and sweet, this is a topic that has really been sitting out there ever since I got here. I believe it was 2011 or early 2012, that the Paynesville Township discontinued their contract with the city of Paynesville. During that time, the city of Paynesville has continued to provide some general services out there, respond to different calls, sometimes when requested, and sometimes just based on our close proximity to those calls. We field all sorts of different calls and individuals walking into the office from Paynesville Township requesting assistance. Usually we try and, forward them on to Stearns County. However, there's been times with some frustrations with citizens who are like, well, I'm here and why won't you help me? So there's been a lot of discussion once we formed the Police and Fire Advisory Board. There was some discussion and has been some discussion about the township and what we do with the township as far as what we respond to, what we don't respond to, what we think. Back in March, the city approached the township about looking at contracting services, or at least some services, general services, and providing some patrol services with them. And as it was put by a member of the Police and Fire Advisory Board, basically looking to cover some of the costs of what we were already doing out there and being compensated for that. At that meeting, the township residents really didn't make a decision. We kind of asked them to either decide one way or another, make a decision as to what your, do you want the city of Paynesville? Don't you want the city of Paynesville? What do you exactly want? It was presented to them, what a potential contract would look like and what we would do out there, which is generally provide the same services that we do now, but do a little bit more on an active patrol side of things with them. The township residents up there didn't really make a decision, which left us to put us where we are today in looking at, from a fiscal standpoint, what do the residents of the city of Paynesville want? There are times, and this is to no fault of the sheriff's office, but there are times where their deputies are just nowhere in the area and we're required to respond out there, to different calls. Is that something that is ultimately the city's responsibility? Is it the city's responsibility from a fiscal standpoint? Like I've told everybody that I've talked to, from my perspective, I have two different sides of this. As a cop for over 24 years, to even contemplate not going out there is very much against everything I stand for. But as a fiscal agent for this city, it's my responsibility to make sure that we're watching it, over the funds that are coming into the police department. If the citizens are okay with that, then we have no issues. I don't have any issues continuing to do that. But that's kind of where we're at here now, is to find out from the residents of this community what they want to see. What was presented to the township back in March was a time period of 9 months of 2023. Over that period, there were 700 and some odd calls out in Paynesville Township, which of the tallied calls or incidents that were started, I believe it's about 300 of those were done by the city of Paynesville.
So before we get into some public comments, I'll just add the reason why I suggested that we do this in a public hearing type of manner is because I think, as somebody posted on Facebook, our police budget is not small. It is by far the largest chunk of our city's operating budget, and where we devote those resources is important. I also think that it's our duty to consider not just the benefit of the township, but that we would be very myopic if we look at how the township, or how the city, excuse me, responds to things and not consider how the township is affected by our actions. Because not only are those who live in the township our neighbors, but many people live there and work here or have family members here who go both places. My brother lives in the township. This could affect them as well. And I think that's important for us to really get the public input. So that's why I asked that we do this public hearing. That's why I think we're hearing from you, is to really consider how do we utilize our resources. I've got a number of people who have marked here that they would like to speak. I am going to start by just reading one of the letters we got. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 6 letters. I have 3 people who've marked that they want to speak. I'll just read one, call in a speaker, read another, call in a speaker, and then so on and so forth. And if anybody who didn't mark that they want to speak changes their mind, let me know, and that's cool. So I'll start. This first one is an email from Bruce Puppy that I received on April 23rd. Dear Mr. Mayor, this email is in regards to the city providing police coverage for the township. I would like to remind everyone the reason the township got rid of the police contract with the city was the city of Painesville was talking about annexing the township to increase their tax base. I used to drive for St. Cloud Metrobus, mostly in the evenings. I would often see Painesville police officers in St. Cloud, usually around the campus, having pulled someone over. I brought this up to Neil Hertzberg. I was informed that Painesville has a mutual aid agreement with St. Cloud. I have no problem with that. I believe Painesville Police Department also has a mutual aid agreement with Stearns County Sheriff's Department. I don't have an opinion whether we have city police or county sheriff coverage. I just do not want the city to use police coverage as leverage to annex the township in the future. Please feel free to reach out via email. So a couple things in there, and I'm just bringing this up so that we all remember, touching on the mutual aid agreements, the policing around St. Cloud State, and Chief will get to that at the end. So that'll be one of our list of questions, is addressing that. Right. Otherwise, I have Luke and Amy Wilson, Mark Digman. I'm assuming both of you haven't changed your mind? Okay. Mr. Bertram, you are the first on my list here of people who wish to speak. Would you still like to?
Yes.
All right.
Council and committee, I thought that Chair Greenlee was chairing it, so I asked her because I need to be in Freeport, I need to leave, but thank you for accommodating that. Jeff Bertram, 662 Spruce Street, Painesville, Minnesota. I'm here as a city resident, just like the other night. Also a former council member when the city and the township did disband the police force, and also as a county commissioner. I'm here once again to say, let's really reflect on this, and let's continue to try to work together, just like we talked the other night, on issues of mutual concern. As a city resident, if you ask me, should we respond to 400 some calls in the township? My response to that would be no. Are you responding to 430 some, or do you need to? You're going to find out at some point during the night that that's not accurate. And so I read all the columns, I read the newsletter, I read all the information, and I kept asking more and more questions. Sheriff Soika couldn't be here because he's out of town. Chief Deputy Dan Miller is here tonight, and he's got some great statistics that, again, when you make decisions, you have to make sure that you have the facts in front of you that you can make good decisions. So I would hope that as a community, if Lake Henry had a fire, Painesville would be there, Richmond would be there, St. Martin would be there, vice versa. I hope that doesn't ever end. If it's life or danger, I would hope that the county would be here, and I know they would, and I hope the city police would be there, whether it's in the township or in the city or in another community if it called for that. So I'm here to say, continue again, let's work together. I'm not sure why there's kind of an effort to divide things versus bringing things together. And so I hope that can be the case. I think it's been effective. I've heard positive things. Obviously, if the county or county people badmouth the city badmouths the county, where is that going to end up in the public? It's kind of like a parent not respecting the police, the priest, the minister, the teacher, and then the kids don't respect the parent. Well, imagine that. We need to respect all of us in this process, and I hope that you can use the facts, which are going to be shared with later from the county perspective. And again, let's make both positive comments towards the city police and towards the county sheriff's department, and let's work together. Every time we have a county deputy in the township and we have a city of police car in the city, just think, we're doubling the coverage and the exposure. And a lot of things that happen, they need backup. You know, Belgrade's here. So again, God bless that people work with one another when it comes to situations like that. So once again, I'll just say, please work together. Don't go where you're not wanted or where you're not needed. And the difference of tickets is very, very different. If it's life or death, heart attack, medical, that's a level 1. If it's a speeding and you'd like to pull somebody over to give them a ticket for 5 miles over, that's a different thing. So you kind of have to prioritize what's important. And again, the statistics will be interesting, I think, when you hear the facts. So thank you for listening. Good luck, and I hope making a rational decision.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, next letter we received came in April 26th from Donovan Meyer. Mayor and Council, I am unable to attend tonight's public hearing due to honoring a previous commitment, but I offer the following thoughts and comments. First of all, I am perplexed that the council is considering the matter of police coverage in the township, since the matter has already been decided by the township residents and their officials. They are apparently satisfied with the coverage currently provided by the county. Having noted the redundancy of the effort, it would be my opinion that the services should not be extended into the township. I recognize the need to be good neighbors, and I think the city performs well in this aspect. The city provides and maintains Veterans Park, which is used by city and township residents alike. We provide a large share of the maintenance costs for trails within the township, and we provide a compost site that benefits all. But police coverage transcends those efforts. Police in our community is a major part of the city's budget. As a taxpayer of this community, I welcome the cost and the effort put forth to keep our community safe. Ours is not a large force, but in my opinion, it is effective. It would be wrong to impose a burden on our department that would possibly stretch its ability to provide services to Painesville proper. While it is obvious that the city in most instances would have a faster response time into the township than other entities, it also means that there is less coverage in the community while an officer is responding elsewhere. This goes well beyond a good neighbor policy. While there may be times when an officer responds to an incident in a passive manner in the township, regular patrols on an active basis, in my opinion, should not be considered. If council opts to pursue this, then they must consider a method to recover costs. Barring a reciprocal agreement with the township or other entities, then perhaps a fee-based response could be considered. When an ambulance responds to a call, there is a corresponding cost. If the fire department responds to a call, there is cost. In some way, those are recoverable. It should be so with police coverage also. I, for one, am satisfied and proud of our police department. They perform a difficult task within our community. I ask the council to very carefully weigh any decision that potentially cast any shade on our department. I thank the council for their commitment to serving our community and for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Sincerely, Donovan Meyer. Okay. Right, thanks, Donovan. Right, next on my list is Deputy Dan Miller.
Thank you, guys. Dan Miller, Chief Deputy from the Stearns County Sheriff's Office. When this all started, we got some information about that people were upset and the city was upset about being out in the township so much. So we did a deep dive into the numbers to try to figure out how we could help. So I have some statistics for you. I took statistics from January of 2022 through April of 2023. Painesville Police Department responded to 451 calls in Painesville Township. 236 of those calls were traffic stops. Those are self-initiated stops that are made. I do have a map also, if you guys want to see it, of where those traffic stops occurred. And I assume a lot of them are where they're seeing a violation in town. They follow them before they can stop them. They stop them out in the township. That counts as a township call on our call screen. So there's 215 non-traffic stop calls. 39 of those calls were business assists closing the compost site and the park that I believe is in the township but city property.
I'm sorry, what was that number?
39.
Okay, thank you.
23 were state patrol assists out on the highway. 78 of those calls, Painesville officers, so we listened to every radio traffic from every call that happened in the township. 78 of those were self-dispatched by Painesville Police Department, or they volunteered to go before we could ask. From January to April of 2023, Stearns County requested Painesville Police Department out in the township 43 times. Stearns County was the primary or first officer to arrive on 426 calls in the city of Painesville during that time. Now, whether that was they were tied up on a call, they didn't have an officer working, or whatever it was, we were in town 426 as the first responding unit to a call in the city of Painesville. We had 159 traffic stops in the city of Painesville during that same time. Just so you guys are aware, we've heard your concerns. We have changed our protocols on how we will be requesting the Painesville Police Department so that we don't have them in the township when it's unnecessary. I hope, and I continue to hope, that we will work together and continue to assist each other when we have emergency calls. I just spent the last week in Polk County helping them. They had a domestic where an officer was killed on a domestic call, and they had 2 agencies that responded. We will continue to do our work in Painesville and help, and we continue to provide assistance. We value our partners. We work well with Paul and your whole entire department. And like I said, we've changed our protocols. We're going to get that out to our sergeants. We have a sergeant working 24 hours a day, and to our dispatch staff to try to reduce that number to ease the burden on your city.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Moving on then, we have another letter from April 26th from Bill and Belinda Ludwig to the Honorable Mayor and City of the Council of the City of Painesville. We are writing in regard to the City of Painesville Police Department patrolling/responding to calls in Painesville Township without monetary compensation from Painesville Township. Our opinion is if Painesville Township wants continued coverage from our local police department, they need to pay for the service just like they do for any other service they receive, i.e. fire services, refuse service. There is no reason this service should be given to the township residents on the backs of city residents. Thank you for your time, Bill and Belinda Ludwig. Right. So then, next on my speaking list here is Barbara Schmidt. Ms. Schmidt.
Barbara Schmidt, I live in the township on Linden Hill Road. And a couple years ago, when the township decided to not use the city of Painesville for policing, I was against it. But since then, I'm for it. Because I think Stearns County has done an excellent job at patrolling and policing, and the city needs the help they need in the city. I think there's a lot more going on in the city than there is out in the township. And I think that's indicative of your calls that you referenced, Deputy Miller, of what was important. And even of those 43 requests from the county for Painesville to respond in the township, it would be interesting to know what type of calls they were. I mean, because I think calls, and I'm not a police officer, so I don't know, but I think calls fall in the categories of, felonies, they fall misdemeanors or infractions. And if those 43 requests from county for Painesville, I can't believe they were felonies, possibly some of those were misdemeanors. And so of the few calls that I see where the county is requesting Painesville to go out and assist them, it's just the neighborly thing to do. And as you've done in the past, it's just the neighborly thing to do. But I think the services that we're getting from the county at the present time is very good, and I would continue to support that the county provide the services for the township.
Thank you. Okay. Next letter we have is again from today, April 26th, from city resident Bill Fuchs. Well, on the subject of city law enforcement, I would like to share the following views. Our city law enforcement department should not be involved in any activities outside of the Painesville city limits. It is the responsibility of my elected representatives to authorize any involvement that would be requested by other agencies on a case-by-case basis. I encourage my elected representatives to utilize this authorization powers to not allow any city law enforcement participation in any special enforcement measures, even when reimbursement funding is available from state or county governments. Having city law enforcement officers harassing and intimidating citizens on the Highway 23 bypass is incredibly counterproductive to creating and fostering a positive image and attitude for our city. I encourage an analysis and cost-saving investigation into the option of following the township's lead in contracting with county or state agencies for any required law enforcement services. Best regards, Bill Fuchs. Right. Going back to my list of speakers, I don't have anybody else who wanted to speak. Shane, I know you got here a little bit late. Did you want to talk to us at all, or?
I can say something.
You can. You're not required.
I missed the part that there is a 3-minute limit.
Yes.
So yes, I did come to this meeting because this actually really did intrigue me. Sorry.
Only 6:30.
As a firefighter and as a paramedic on the ambulance service, I do feel that I am in support of the Painesville Police Department out in the township. And the reason I say that is because there has been multiple times that I personally have been on an ambulance call where I'm waiting 15, 20 plus minutes for a sheriff to get there. And to me, that's concerning because I don't know what I'm walking into. They just had that domestic call in Cyrus
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
that very well could have started out as a medical where we as first responders, fire department or ambulance, are walking in first, not knowing what we're getting into, and we don't have the security of an officer present. And to me, with the Painesville Police Department, there's been multiple times that I have been on calls where the police department from Painesville have been on those calls because sheriffs were too far out. Now, I have a great working relationship with the police department. They are very well trained as far as the medical end of things. I'm very comfortable with them being on those calls. I'm very comfortable with them securing the scene prior to me going in. There could be very well an easy situation that we may need an officer 10, 15 minutes sooner. That could be a life or death for another individual. Whether you guys come up with a certain contract where if, let's just say sheriffs are 15, 20 minutes out and police department can respond, and coming up with like a on-call basis where you charge hourly for that services, anything would be better than nothing. That's basically what I have to say. Kind of mutual aid agreements like we do for the fire department.
Thank you, Shane. With that, then, there are only 2 letters left. We have one received from, this one initially came in on Tuesday, April 25th. She followed up earlier today from Doreen Miller. Hi, Sean. I am in Colorado visiting some of my kids and wanted to share my concerns for the meeting tonight. I would like the comments listed below to be read at the meeting. I was very surprised to hear that we city residents were providing free service to the township residents for police calls. I thought the township decided at least 2 to 3 years ago to not contract with the city for police services. I would like to know at what city council meeting after that decision was made by the township that it was discussed and voted on by the city council to provide free services to the township. We as city residents should have that information, and I don't recall reading in any newspaper, council meeting minutes that it was discussed and what the vote was. Please provide that information Wednesday evening at the meeting. If that information can't be provided, then in my opinion, we have a bigger problem if decisions are being made outside of legal council meetings and no record of us providing free services. Chief, I'm going to want you to touch on that. Another concern is what happens if the police department is in the township providing free services and they are needed in the city for services. If the county can't get to a township call fast enough, I assume they couldn't get to the city any sooner either, if the plan would be for city residents to wait for county officers. In the mayoral news column regarding this issue, it was stated that the township is satisfied with the response time from the county, so they are choosing not to contract with the city of Painesville. I don't understand why this is even an issue at this point. They don't want our services, so we don't provide the services. Seems rather obvious to me. Thank you for letting me share my concerns, and I hope the obvious solution is reached. Okay, just continuing our letter speaker routine. Anybody change their mind and want to? Okay. Last one we have is received earlier today from Melinda Youngkin, to whom it may concern. The situation regarding Painesville law enforcement responding to calls in the township without compensation has recently come to my attention. It is my understanding that the township chose not to have Painesville PD respond to calls in their area because they did not want to compensate the city for that service. Stearns County is the designated law enforcement agency tasked with providing service to the township. As a citizen and taxpayer in Painesville, I feel the need to ask why are our tax dollars being used to provide this service to a community free of charge? They are currently providing compensation for the fire department to service their area. Why not the PD? I realize that all branches of law enforcement are geared to support and back each other up, rightfully so. However, in this instance, I believe that the Painesville PD needs to stand down and allow the township to fully understand and embrace the choice they have made. Respectfully, Melinda Youngkin. I just want to touch on a couple of things here as we go into the period to answer questions. The first was, and it's disappointing that Commissioner Bertram had to leave. His is the first question I want to talk about. He asked, why is there this sort of effort to divide people? And I'm disappointed that it's been phrased in that manner because that's not how I see this issue. This issue came up as we have continued to discuss different ways among the Police and Fire Advisory Committee of, one, retaining officers in our department and doing other things. And one idea that was thrown out is if we can expand our service area into the township, it's going to give our officers a more invigorating or a bigger area to patrol rather than the 2.5 square miles of the city of Painesville. I get bored driving around the city of Painesville after 10 minutes. I can't imagine what it'd be like for 12 hours. So we approached on that thought of, is this a way that we can sort of benefit the city by helping us retain some officers, get a little more duties involved, but also benefit the residents of the township by providing a service out there. We approached the township with the contract that the chief discussed, and the response was, we like what we have, we're not paying for what we have, this is fine with us. That led to the discussion here in town by residents who said, what are we doing responding to calls? Why did we respond to a call out on Highway 23 bypass where one of the squads was wrecked in an accident on the snow when we could have said that's the sheriff's call? Why is now the city's money and the city's insurance being affected because we were responding to something in Painesville Township? The question's been raised, why are we responding to complaints at Shady's Bar or alarm calls at the golf course? That's not the city's problem. So this question came up, I've been hearing it from residents who are saying, I pay tax dollars for this very expensive department. I also pay tax dollars to the sheriff's department. The township pays taxes to the sheriff's department. Why are we doing that job out there? Why are we responding to those calls? So that's why I wanted to have this discussion with the community, is to figure out where does that sort of city protecting, where do we protect the city and where do we help our neighbors? Where does that line fall? I don't see this as an effort to divide people. The division is already there. This is simply airing what's been festering underneath. So this comes about because of the push from our residents who are, I think, tired of providing services and having to pay for something when other people are benefiting from it. I am curious, Chief Deputy Miller, I don't know if you want to answer this now, but at some point I'd like to hear about the changed protocols and how those are going to be sent out and what that means.
So what we've done in the past, do you want?
If you could, please.
So what we've done in the past is, and for all of our jurisdictions, because we do rely on all of our jurisdictions to help out. We have a large county, you guys know that. You know, and that's why we help you, you help us. And the change in protocols, so in the past, we've always had where a sergeant has to approve local jurisdiction to go out in the township for calls. And we were gonna limit those to those core calls, medical emergencies, domestics, calls for lives of services. Obviously, I can't control if they make traffic stops in the county. I can't control if they're gonna go out and do their business checks. Those are just things that they do, and that's not, I mean, it's not an issue for us. So we're going to try to really limit the calls and the calls for service that you guys have to leave the county. And I would encourage you guys to still allow that to happen in cases of emergency to go out and assist us. You know, and there's a big argument, what's a emergency service? Is an alarm an emergency service? Some of the calls that were out there, I think you guys had a event out at the ice arena for Town Days. Is that correct? There was some calls in there where there was some, was there like a street dance or something out at, where there was some minor consumptions written out there because you guys were providing security out there. So that's some of the calls. Those we're not worried about. But the calls that we send you guys out to, we're gonna really limit of what those calls would be to try to avoid the burden on the city that you guys have.
Since he's at the podium, any council members or board members have any questions for Chief Deputy Miller?
Can we see them stats that you read off?
Absolutely.
Form? Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm a little bit concerned.
Don, would you mind just pushing the microphone down towards the Thanks.
I'm a little concerned with some of the things that were said here. I think it is conquer and divide and conquer. I was at those advisory meetings. I asked Chief Paul if, because he was always saying, well, we provide almost all the calls. We respond to most of them. And I said, well, we've got them here from the county. Well, we do most of those. And I said, well, how can you say that? Can you tell me exactly how many calls you do? I don't have the personnel to write down every time we make a call. So he would not give me those answers, but yet now all of a sudden, we know how many calls they're making. How does that happen when you couldn't before? I had suggested at the meeting that maybe we need to do something, come up with a deal or something where the township could chip in to help. We don't want services for nothing. But instead, you guys came to the annual meeting, pushed this here thing, and the next thing, there's articles in the paper and slandering everybody and stuff, and now it's come to this. You know, this is what I can't take. You know, we could have ironed some of these things out if you'd let some time play out so that we could do these. But no, all of a sudden, it's this. Letters by the mayor in the paper that just incited people. That's why these letters are here. They wouldn't have written them otherwise. So I am very much against, I think you have to work together, but you don't work together by what you just did. I just can't believe it. I agree with the deputy. We had people in the township that complained that people were speeding on their roads. Some of them were really going fast. We said, call the sheriff's department, tell them the date, the time that these people are doing it, and they will take care of it. And they did. They came out and they posted a guy there, and they wrote out tickets. They were going 70 miles an hour or better in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. But they, whatever we asked them, they did. So, I mean, I can't believe this, that you guys say that you're doing all the calls and stuff. it's not in the figures.
To just speak real quickly on the numbers, so we have I call him a number geek in our office that likes to do this stuff. He spent a lot of time, it would have been extremely difficult for Chief Wagner to get the kind of information that I did bring. He spent a lot of time on that. And it would have took Paul numerous hours to come in to listen to all the phone calls and stuff like that, or all the traffic stops. But we did put a lot of time in this because we really wanted to dig in and see. We wanted to lighten the burden on you guys. We agree with you but we wanted to see what the numbers were, so.
And I will also say, just regarding those numbers, we did have that discussion at the Police and Fire Board, and I do recall the chief saying he didn't have the numbers then, but he got those numbers and brought them to a subsequent board meeting, and we spent multiple meetings discussing what the terms of a proposal would look like, whether or not this proposal would be fair, whether or not it would be equal, and then we brought it to the city council before bringing it to the township. And that happened over the course of, I believe it was at least 2 or 3 meetings. I want to say 3, maybe even 4. It wasn't something that happened in one non-noticed meeting. The difference, Butch, is you weren't at any of the meetings. So the discussion was had, the discussion was discussed, and we didn't have the township voice when we brought the proposal to the township at the annual meeting. We went up to the township before the annual meeting and sat and talked with Steve and with Mark and said, how do you want us to propose this? How do you want us to do it? We have something in mind. And the instruction there was bring something to the annual meeting, which we did. So that's where this came from. It's not that the city council just developed this contract out of thin air. This happened over the course of multiple meetings. It was on multiple agendas, and it finally went forward. So I'm not sure where the disconnect seems to be happening here. Chief.
And I think it's important to know, going back to, Commissioner Bertram's comments and even some of the comments from, Supervisor Mueller over here, this isn't a discussion of we're not providing services out in the township. This is a discussion with the city residents of Painesville of, are they okay with how things are operating now or not? And it's getting the input from the residents so that the city council, the police department, can make informed decisions about what the best path is forward. We have a good working relationship with the sheriff's office. Again, and Dan mentioned this, it's a very large county. You're talking a county that's over 1,600 square miles. That is a lot of area and a lot of territory for them to patrol. And they're not going to be able to be everywhere. We know that, they know that. And it really just is a matter of finding out, for these guys' sake, for our sake, what everybody wants. There is no division here. I'm the one chief in this county, and some of the reasons these numbers are the way they are, and I know there was a question on it, in Doreen's email, I'm the one chief in this county that said, look, if you feel there's a call, because everybody in this township and everyone in the city are our neighbors, we're all one community. If you feel there's a call you need to respond to, whether the sheriff's office has said go or not, you need to go. If it's something that adversely potentially impacts somebody, you need to go. And, it was about being able to provide that service in partnership and cooperation with the sheriff's office. The problem is unfortunately, I'll take the blame for it. It blurs the lines as far as who that responsibility belongs to, which is why we continue to get people walking into our doors versus calling the sheriff's office, which leads to the frustrations of us saying, I'm sorry, you need to call the sheriff's office about the guy who damaged your mailbox or whatever else, or the guy who has defrauded you out of money. That's not our responsibility. This is about getting clarity, and it's about getting clarity for the city council to be able to set the directions and make things. It's not about division. It's never been about division. Law enforcement is not about division. It's about keeping our community safe, keeping the residents of Painesville safe, and the residents of Painesville Township safe. And there's no possible way, and Dan can echo it, because we've been on I don't know how many calls, we had a stretch of 4 homicides in 3 years, 2.5 years. We need the partnerships with them. We need their assistance just as much as they need ours. So this is about coming to, an understanding of what the expectations are. So this idea that this is about division is absolutely false. That's not the case.
Tark.
Mark Dingman.
I have a question.
Okay, would you mind, Mark, just so that we can hear you, go to the podium?
And I can sit down.
Mark Dingman, supervisors at Paynesville Township. Just one thing, I do really think that we all need to work together. That's my end game. We just need to work together. But there's perception, I think, that the city of Paynesville constituents need to know. What is actually the real number that we're talking about that you're going to? Because if you're saying there's 400 or 500 calls a year that is being driven to the township, then yes, by all means, we should be taking care of that. But if it's, how many of them did you say there was? 45, 50 of them a year? 43 in a year's time? As a city constituent, I'd say, wow, that isn't that much. I mean, you guys are barking up the wrong tree then, because that's not going to make or break your department. And I know that Mr. Widener, or Chief Widener, had talked to me, even at the meeting, saying that he encourages all of his patrol people to go out in the community, in the Paynesville Township, just so they know if they ever get called for mutual aid, they know where to go. Plus, in the same breath hold, and I think it was hit on earlier, why do we have a big turnover in police force in Paynesville? Because we only have 2.5 miles of driving. That, for me as a young man, and in that retrospect, I would be bored out of my mind. So, yes, you want them to go around, and yes, I believe that Chief Widener, he's trying to promote, his deputies and stuff like that. But again, back to the end of the question is, the true cost of police patrolling in the Paynesville Township, what does that actually look like to the constituents of the city of Paynesville? And I think that's the core of it. So, thank you.
Thank you. So I want to touch on some of the questions that came up in some of these letters. Chief, can you talk a little bit about the comments from Mr. Puppy's letter about us patrolling St. Cloud and when that has happened and why we were down there?
Yes, so the conversations about patrolling St. Cloud, that was all a grant-based program, the TZD program, which is strictly traffic enforcement.
TZD being Toward Zero Deaths.
Toward Zero Death. So that program is a completely federally funded program that every agency in Stearns County participates in. I encouraged my staff, as I did, to look at the St. Cloud area when we did that. DWI enforcement down around the Paynesville area on a Friday or Saturday night, based on the parameters in which that program runs, does not make sense. It just doesn't, to put an extra car out driving Paynesville Township or the Paynesville area to do that. This was another one of those things that Mark alluded to give guys an opportunity to go out, experience, learn, train, see these different things. So anybody that's ever been up in St. Cloud has only been there as part of a grant program to provide that extra traffic enforcement. That, quite honestly, I think it's been years since anybody's been up there.
I think pre-COVID was the last time we talked about it.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time one of our guys patrolled St. Cloud doing TZD.
I think the only other time a car would be in or around St. Cloud is on the way to the jail.
On the way to the jail and dropping off evidence.
Yeah, okay. Otherwise, looking through here, could you talk about some of Doreen's questions about, and I think we've touched on it in various ways, but her question about whether or not the council voted to authorize services and whatnot. We didn't, I'll make that clear. There's been no authorization by the council to go out there and actively patrol. We've left that to your discretion. But again, I don't think, barring the rare occasion where you're on a training or something like that, we're not actively patrolling. So can you just talk about what services are being provided and what we would be looking at discussing here tonight?
So the things that we are doing, when my guys are on their way to different areas or like Mark alluded to, it's important my guys understand the roads in and around Painesville Township. Why? Because if they get into a pursuit in Painesville that heads out into the township, I need them to know that, Northwest Lake Cronus Road makes a hard right turn, and they don't put my car in the ditch, and they understand what the roads look like and, what they're heading into. For the most part, if you're seeing them out there, they're either heading, to the beach, they're patrolling down in that area, as it is a city-owned beach, locking up the bathrooms there, the compost sites, that sort of thing. There will be patrol on Highway 23, because a good chunk of Highway 23 through this area goes through the city of Painesville. The other services, I know Dan alluded to, there's only 40 calls that the sheriff's office asked. I can tell you that of those 70 calls that we just simply went to, and I don't know what the calls are, I didn't listen to them, but I would wager to say my guys are asking, my guys are offering, because we all have a mapper, we all see where everyone is. And depending upon the nature of that call, if the nearest car that's responding to that's in Sauk Center, and it's going to be a 30-minute time lapse for them to get down there, and they can run out, in 5 minutes and find out, okay, is this house being broke into, or is this another false alarm or whatever, they're responding to those things. And yes, they may either jump the call, or they may simply say, hey, we'll head out and check it out. So we can't dismiss those 70 calls. Those are calls that they responded to, and 90% of the time, I'd wager to say it's because there isn't anybody in the area to do it. Again, it's no fault of the sheriff's office. It's 1,600 square miles, this county.
In a time where law enforcement is stretched thin.
Correct. We will respond oftentimes to the we actually don't get called to too many medicals out in the township. We're responding to usually some sort of other disturbance, issues at Shady's, domestic situations, those types of things. The alarms are some of the bigger ones. I'm trying to think. What else we had just in the notes I had that we were responding to. Businesses, the DWIs out there, we had a majority of those, at least in the time that I pulled our numbers from. So, it's kind of a little bit of this, that, the other. I don't know, we've got 3 animal complaints. I don't know if you looked into what those were, Dan. I know we've responded to burning complaints out there. I know there was a complaint here recently that we were asked to go to where, a guy was wanting to pick up some property, and there was a question as to whether or not it was going to be a contentious situation. So those are the types of things. And, the question is it overly burdensome? I don't know. I would say having to sit out in an apartment building for 8 hours with the SWAT team trying to get someone out is probably a little bit more burdensome. But this is why we're having the conversation to discuss, does anything have to change? So I guess, I don't know if that completely answers it.
I think the biggest concern I have as a city leader, and from what I've heard from people around town, is it's not going out there in the 15 minutes to respond to a false alarm that's giving people concern. It's what happens if we're responding to a call and an officer gets hurt in the township. The city's then paying all of that work comp claim, because we do have the mutual aid agreements with the joint fire departments where all of the local communities chip into that. TZD stuff is funded differently, and we've had issues with that. But if our police officers are responding to a call in the township and they get hurt, or we lose a squad, something like that, that's city tax dollars. The time going out and responding to a call, I don't think anybody's concerned with. It's the what happens next. And that's where residents have a concern, is if there's a work comp claim and now an officer is out for 6-8 months, how is the city going to be paying for that difference? That's an officer down, that is time on a work comp claim, our premiums go up, our costs exponentially increase.
Sean, can I make a quick?
Yeah,
Oh, can I add to that first, though?
while he gets set.
Yeah, because I heard this as well saying, and you guys correct me, I mean, you know more about how this works, but the other cost is, you might say, responding to a call takes 5-10 minutes, but in certain calls, and, you know, if it's a DWI or if it's some kind of arrest or anything, there's more time involved in it, taking them to the jail, court time, other time that are factored into it as well, so this could take up additional hours as well, and that was one of the residents' concerns.
Chief Deputy, could you address both?
And I just want to, like, you know, Paul mentioned some of those calls, and I don't know why we sent him to those calls, and I can go back if you guys really want me to dive into it. But what I'm going to tell you is, we're going to stop that, okay? We're going to not have them respond to those calls. And I would encourage Paul, before their officers leave the city to go to a call, our sergeant has to approve it. And I can't force Paul to do whatever he wants to do. He's the chief. But if you guys don't want him going to these, then you can't go if we tell you not to go. You know what I mean? And, you know, our sergeant will approve, and most of the time, it's not Paul and I out there when this happens, it's the night shift people that are working our nights. We have a sergeant 24 hours, 7 days a week. Our sergeant will make that call. We will give them strict guidelines on when they should request your officers to go out there. There's always chance for liability, there's always chance for things. And the other thing I would say, when we get on scene and we get officers on scene, we will try to clear your officers as fast as we can so they can get back into the city. So.
Can you touch base on Shane's, what he brought up when he was up there speaking with your timeline on getting to a neighbor of ours that could be lying there or a potential risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So normally, on most calls, I think they would go in on a regular medical call. We will have them stage, and those are calls we would call Painesville for. I mean, if it's something serious where we think, you know, we have houses flagged because of previous calls or whatever, threats of violence, that type of stuff, we would not send them into those calls. And is there still a potential they go to a heart attack that we think is a straight up heart attack? That's something, you know, the person's violent, absolutely. But we try to really limit, and I think you guys, have you seen a problem with that we need to look at as far as sending you to calls that aren't safe for you guys?
Well, we do go into quite a few houses that are pretty sketchy.
Yeah.
And my thing that I'm looking at too is the first response, because they get there on a CPR in progress. They get there 5+ minutes sooner than we do. You know, to me, that's concerning because it could be a really critical call that they could give us information that we're not getting because they won't be able to now go to these calls.
Well, I hope, Mr. Mayor, I hope you still allow your officers to respond to those calls. I mean, those are calls that absolutely every other jurisdiction that we have respond to for us, no matter if we're close or not close. Because if Paul's doing CPR, I'm going to be there trying to get this AED on him. I'm trying to, the services we can provide, and I would say the same thing in your city. If you don't have somebody working because you have a gap because of vacations or whatever, we're going to respond until you guys can get there. I mean, I just, like I said, I want to continue our relationship. I don't ever want you to prevent them from not coming out to the county because they are a very important service to us and service to the residents. And I never want somebody to get there and us to be waiting 20 minutes because somebody's, you know, having a heart attack and Painesville sitting right there. They absolutely should respond to those calls.
Yeah, I personally would never vote to say hard stop, never going out there. The question I was hoping, and what the chief and I had discussed, is finding that delineation between what is sort of a life-threatening emergency and what's a more run-of-the-mill thing. And I didn't know from the dispatching how that worked. But what I'm hearing from you, Chief Deputy, is that there is maybe a code system that dispatch uses, and then in notifying the sergeant on duty. And if those protocols are looked at and examined, okay, we know that there's a thing here. Now I can go back and I can tell my constituents, we've had this conversation, we've addressed it, we've heard your concerns, here's how we've taken it. And my response would be, we're not jumping calls because there's a dog on the loose. But by all means, if that sergeant makes the call and says, we need you because either an officer's in danger or someone's life is in danger, get out there. Because that is, I don't care what that costs, that's just the right thing to do. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels, I'm but one vote, but that's where I'm at. And I'm kind of the opinion, based on what I've heard from you, Chief Deputy, and I want to get the chief's opinion before finalizing it, but I'm of the opinion where it sounds like the change of protocols is such where we as a board could probably vote and say, look, we're not going to jump calls and take them over on our own initiative, but when we're asked to respond, we're still, of course, going to do that when need be.
And it's not going to be a perfect system. We're going to make calls that we're going to send you something, send them to, that when they get there, they're going to determine that we didn't need to send you there. And, you know, like I said, we'll evaluate those and we'll keep an eye on what calls you guys are responding to so we can make sure we try to adjust them. And, you know, we put the word out, you know, we're staff shortened just like everybody else. And, you know, we're trying to get, that's one thing that Sheriff Soik has done in the last 5 years is really expand our coverage out on the west end of the county. And, you know, so that's something we're working on. We're not perfect by any means. I mean, you could give me another 20 cops, I'd be happy, but we don't have the budget for it and we can't find them, just like you guys, so.
Chief, talking about, and I know you probably don't know the details of the change protocols, but where do you stand?
I don't think my position's really ever changed. My opinion has always been, you know, and I think Dan would echo this, we don't do this job, you know, necessarily for the money. This is about the safety of the community. My personal opinion is, you know, has kind of always been from the cop side of me that, you know, we just need to provide whatever services are necessary to the people around us.
So the cop side or the township resident side of you?
I have a squad car in my driveway. No one comes to my house.
There's a process to get you into the city.
I think that was addressed in one of these letters. No, whatever the protocol change is I don't have any issues with it. You know, for me, this has always been about service. And again, if the Painesville City Council and the Painesville residents, you know, look at this the same way I do, and most people don't look at things the same way I do, but if they look at it the same way I do, this is about the service to this community and this area. You know, I think when we look at it, if my guys are, you know, heading out there on, you know, more significant things, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all, you know, we've never shied away from responding to those. I think the difficult thing, and I would hope Dan would echo this, is, you know, even these things that look like benign calls are turning into not so. You know, that heart attack could very well be an ambush for the rescue squad and for the ambulance personnel and the fire personnel arriving on scene. That is the direction society has gone, and that's what we are seeing. So it's hard to sit there and unequivocally say, this isn't important. As a resident of Painesville Township and just a human in general, it's hard for me to look at an alarm on the lake and be like, oh, well, sucks for them, you know, because that could be somebody breaking into their home. And if they happen to be up on, you know, a call, or their deputy happens to be up by Sauk Center and that's their closest one, well, you can take a lot of stuff and you can do a lot of things in 30 minutes. So my 2 cents is, for the really long-winded answer there, is whatever protocols they want to put in place and whatever protocols the city council decides, that's the directive that'll be given to my staff. To me, I hope whatever that decision is based on public safety, because that's why we're here.
I have a question. What are we talking about, division? Where does division come into this picture? What are you talking about when you say the division?
I'm not. That was Commissioner Bertram that said that.
You just made a comment about the division. Why are we even talking about division when we all live in the same area? We all work for the same
purpose. We have a state, we have counties, we have townships, and cities. And if those four can't get along, nothing's gonna work. Now, we're making a comment about division.
So Don, I know from my own personal experience, I've had city residents come to me and ask the question of why we're subsidizing services in the township. And that's why this conversation is being had publicly and in this forum where people were invited. It's not to incite riots or do anything like that. It's with the people and the feelings that I've had, I thought having a discussion like this where people can participate is going to be the best way to get the most and accurate, truthful information out there. I think it's easy it's easy if the chief and I had gone to the sheriff's department, sat down and looked at these numbers and reported back, everyone's gonna go, okay, whatever, that's just a bunch of guys in a room, nobody believes it. But having the opportunity for residents to come in and voice their concerns and hear it in person, I believe is more impactful. So the question is, of course, where do we draw the line between saying, this is something that we're gonna help out with versus this is your responsibility? There's always a demarcation of duties in whatever we're doing. And it's, the discussion tonight is, where is that demarcation? And I'm looking at it, my perspective, and I'd like to hear from the rest of the board here and then the council, is I'm satisfied by hearing from the sheriff's department that they've heard these concerns, they've listened to them, they're changing some internal policies. And then we're going to instruct our officers that if this is a problem, if it's taking away from things, we're not responding on our own initiative. And if we do, we can't come back later and complain about it.
Well, in his remark, he doesn't see it as a division. What's he talking about? Where's the division? What is causing division? Why is he talking about division?
My remark, Don, was based on Commissioner Bertram's discussion about bringing people together and this not being a division and separation and everything else in a sheriff's office versus the police department. I think I made it very clear that this isn't about the sheriff's department versus the police department.
I understand that.
So let me say, Butch, we've heard from you. I see you've got your hand up. I'll certainly, yeah.
What started the conversation? That people started asking you why the city was paying the whole bill for the township. Somebody must have said that to them, otherwise they wouldn't even know it. I mean, somebody had to start this conversation. You know, where did that start? I mean, I don't want division at all. I've never had a bone to pick with Paul. I've never had a bone to pick with you. But being on this board and hearing some of the responses, I mean, you know, I guess it would have worked out better if we could have sat down and we could have kind of figured out a ballpark figure. But when we asked about it, well, it was 100,000, 130,000, but we can't guarantee a man because we can't even find people to hire. So you can't guarantee anything that you're going to be servicing or anything. You know, I think what Deputy Miller has said, that they're making some changes and stuff, and this is going to work out better, and then let's take a look at it again. If you, in fact, are spending that kind of time at it, let us go and ask the township residents. We can ask them. We're from the township. We can ask them. We can put a proposal in. You know, but...
Okay. So let me just, turning back, we are in a public hearing here, and we'll get back to our business meeting. Is there anybody else? Mark, I see you stood up. Maybe you were going to the podium.
I was just going to make just one comment. I think
Sure.
where it gets confusing is that you're coming out and saying you guys, the police department is subsidizing the township. and we're not asking for any substitute, any monies from the city or substitute anything for us in the township. So I think that's where that clarification saying that you are subsidizing the police department in the township. And you're really not, because we're not asking for that. And I think that's why people will say, well, why are they getting it for free then? And I think just that word of, you're saying it, you as the mayor are saying that we are subsidizing the township, part of that, their time away from the city. And I think right there it gets construed to a point where, why are we doing it? And as a city of Painesville constituent, I would say the same thing. But we in the township aren't asking for any subsidies. We work together really closely with the trail. We work really closely with, we put the pier in at the Veterans Park. We gave how many thousands of dollars to that. When we put up the shelter at the park, we gave $25,000 to the city for that. So we, as the Painesville Township, do give the city of Painesville subsidies, if they want to call it, for different green grants that they want to for different things. There's not very many times that we come to the city and say, we need money from you guys. But it goes the other way, and we are always pleased to doing it. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not really asking for any subsidies for the police department.
Yeah, and I don't know where I use the term subsidize, but I don't see, yes, and if you could go to the podium, please, then we'll go on. So Ms. Schmidt.
Barb Schmidt again from the township. Just listening to this, based on my career, statistics mean a lot. And so hearing from Deputy Miller the statistics, the exact numbers of calls, not only for, to help Paul here in the township, I think it would be good for the city of Painesville to hear number of calls that are made. The types of calls, misdemeanors, felonies, infractions, whatever. But setting people's expectations in the correct manner can only be done not only through words, but, because oftentimes people hear different things, but it's through the data, it's through the statistics. And so, because we don't have there's nothing in the paper anymore. We used to have information in the paper regarding the types of calls, the number of calls, what's happening in our city, or at one point in time, what was happening in the township, and we don't hear that anymore, other than hearsay. So I guess I would just encourage maybe, if there's discussions to this, it's based on facts and it's based on figures, versus just a comment here or a comment there that is made by people.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody here on the council or the board have any questions for Chief Wagner, or more specifically Chief Deputy Miller, before we close the public hearing? Ms. Beck.
Chief Deputy Miller, thanks for coming, first of all. But, so you mentioned, I had a question, you kind of answered it, but the Sheriff's Department is short-staffed at this time, correct? Do you, roughly by about how many officers?
Currently, we're only one officer, like, by numbers wise, we're only one officer short. We do have some injuries and stuff like that, FMLA type things, but as far as actual numbers, currently, we're one short.
Okay, I was just, because obviously we can all use 20 more officers, but I wasn't sure about that, so.
Paul says he doesn't like it when I try to take his, though. So.
Yeah. It's not our favorite, shall we say. Okay, that was.
We've had that discussion.
That's just a concern I have, being that the recruitment and retainment of officers all over the country is in the position that it is. And not only that, but rural PDs are folding all the time, and the deputies we do have are given greater and greater areas that they need to cover. So I think that nothing's going to be perfect, but I think it's good to look at who's taking care of what, when, and continue doing the best we can. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for the deputy? All All right, then with that, I will adjourn our public hearing. We'll go back into our business meeting. And what that means to those in the gallery, you're free to stick around, but we're going to close down the public comment time. And this is a joint meeting, so the council and the board will discuss and talk about all of the information we just heard. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, you are more than welcome to stick around.
Thank you, guys.
And I mean, I do hear what Commissioner Bertram was saying, that, you know, doing this is divisive. Butch, I hear what you're saying, that the column was inflammatory. I guess I'll disagree with that. But I hear what you're saying, and I respect that. I just think that having more information out there in the open leads to more trust and greater understanding by everyone involved. And that's why I wanted to do it this way. I'm glad that we did. In the absence of information, our minds assume things, and we know what assume means. So I'm glad that we were out here. I'm glad that you were here, Chief Deputy, to provide us some information. I'm in favor of us continuing to respond when asked. I don't know what's going on with the 78 self-dispatched, but if there's a question or concern, we're going to stop dispatching ourselves. That would be my position on it. But when we're called for help, we need to answer that call. Especially, I mean, the numbers, Paul, that you were able to get, and I'm not faulting your numbers, because I know what you have access to is limited, but 43 is a heck of a lot less than what we thought going into this conversation.
Well, I think, and without diving into Paul's calls too, those 78 that they self-dispatch, the officer that, or the captain that did this probably put 40, 50, 60 hours into compiling the information that we got. There is very possible, like Paul said, that there's some of those 78 that we would have sent them to anyway. I just dispatched prior. And like I said, if you want me to dig deeper into those calls, I definitely can do that. So like I said, some of those 78 are very possible that we would have asked them to respond also.
Yeah, and to answer kind of what you said, Sean, I mean, even the numbers we had, when we look at, you know, we knew of the 300 and some that we had, 160, you know, we've never hid the fact that 160 of those are traffic. Now, they're not all self-dispatched. We have, you know, several of those are, you know, will be ones that are coming in on driving complaints and stuff like that.
No, there's at least one in that.
What's that?
There's at least one in that time period that I dispatched you to.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of these things, and honestly, without doing a call by call by call analysis, we'll never know the exact true picture. You know, and I think, you know, like I said, and I've repeatedly said, this was about getting and hearing the voice of the city to understand what they want. So, you know, if the council's wishes will be, hey, it's going to be on Sergeant say-so only, that's fine. I made it very clear. If you guys tell me this is what it is, that's what it's going to be, so.
Well, and my curiosity still comes at if there's still a mutual aid call, who's paying for the mutual aid service?
Well, and look, you know, Dan may or may not disagree with me. I don't think he will. To me, we have a budget, but this job isn't about the money. We're not an enterprise fund. We don't make money. We're not here because of money. We are here because of the service to the community. And like I've told the city prior, we end up with mutual aid just as much from other entities as, you know, they potentially do. You know, 2015, we had the State Patrol SWAT down here. There were cops and troopers from all over the state that came here to deal with the situation we had. There was a significant amount of money between the helicopter and their SWAT team and the number of times that we had them out that we didn't pay for.
We had approximately 250 hours into Pope County last week. My entire week, about 80 hours was spent in Pope County from Saturday evening till through the funeral. You know, that's a huge cost, but it's something we just do. You know,
Can I add a couple comments here?
Yeah.
So it's been 11 years since the city has done active patrol out around the township.
And that's me, I thought 2012 was the year.
2011, 12.
Okay.
It was in that.
I know, I kind of got a chuckle of the comments, 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, oh no, come on.
It's been a while on that.
I was around that.
Well, since that time, there's been a lot of things that have changed. One of them is that we're all getting older, and the demographics around the area is getting older too. But since then, messages get relayed a lot faster with texting, cell phone service,
Social media.
and the like. And if there's a problem that's going to be had, the information is going to get processed a lot faster by those that could possibly be doing things of deviant nature that the law enforcement needs to keep on top of. That, along with, since the last contract was signed, opioids have been a problem, fentanyl, and now with the legalization of pot coming around, possibly in December, that's going to add a whole new layer of problems. And I would hope that we could help out with the township as much as needed, especially when you look at situations now where active shooter drills are in the conversation, parents buying bulletproof backpacks for their kids. This is where we're at, and we need to be on top of what's going on when the information comes across, which is why I believe to keep everyone safe, we need to expand with the times along with this. And what happened 11 years ago was probably right at the time. But what's happening right now, I do believe that if the sheriff's department and the police were to co-opt on this through the township, it's going to make Shane's job a heck of a lot more peaceful, if that's possible. But knowing that you're going to a call and you have law enforcement right behind you would seem more calming than not. So that's all I have on here. Thank you.
Comment, please.
I mean, it's not technically a public forum, Shane, but sure. Since you said please.
It's at his discretion.
Yeah, you get 3 seconds.
A couple things that, as I've been standing back there listening, I'm curious to Chief Deputy, when you said that they only responded to 45 calls all year, I know in the last, for sure, less than a month, I've seen them or dealt with them or heard them go out into the township 7 times just in the last month that I know of, me off the top of my head. That's 84 right there, so his numbers are pretty consistent. I'm curious for your approach, and I'm directing this towards the township here. When you say that you're going to now reduce what they're going to be doing in the township, that scares me. And that should scare the township. And I say that because, like I said prior, that could potentially be a 20-minute response that you're waiting on an officer for your family member. City Council, I really hope that you guys do not tell Paul to not respond out in the township because you want to save a few pennies. To me, this is a catch-22, 100% catch-22. Hearing what the township had to say, when they said the stuff that they donated to the city for our parks and stuff like that, I take that into consideration, and I do appreciate that as a city member, because that's less taxes that I have to pay. And I'm really hoping that you guys are appreciating the fact that the Painesville Police Department are assisting the Stearns County coming out into the township as first responders as well. What is the police department budget here? Right around 700,000?
750.
750, okay.
We're not at 700. I would like it if you guys would give me 700. No, we're at about 600.
What is the township budget for the sheriffs to be in their township?
It's free.
Free. Okay, so,
You're paid through taxes, which you are too. You're paying.
right, so for me as a city, for me as a city member, I'm getting hit on taxes twice. I'm paying taxes for the city of Painesville to patrol the city I live in. And I'm also paying Stearns County taxes for police service, and this is nothing against you guys, that I feel is not there. So, to me, I really hope between the two entities that you two can get your stuff together and figure out a number, so that way, when the fire department responds, when the ambulance responds, when somebody calls 911 and wants a police officer there, that money is not a factor. To me, that's just stupid. Let's just say he comes up with, okay, it costs $150 an hour for us to send a police officer to deal with this call that the sheriffs can't get to. What is that, $10,000? That could go back into the public safety budget that could also supply for other safety departments. For equipment for the police department, for equipment for the fire department, whatever it could be. I mean, there's all kinds of unlimited options out there if you guys could just come together. And to me, it's not one of those where this should be a sheriff versus local or a township versus a city. This is obviously public safety, and we shouldn't be putting price tags on public safety.
Thanks, Shane.
Thank you.
Megan?
It's been a long day, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the township already said no, correct? They already turned down the proposal,
That's correct. Yep, we're not
Okay,
here to
so-
talk about it.
Technically,
And we're just-
technically, they didn't say anything.
Okay, and we're just here to decide what.
$50,000.
The
believe I
proposal is
saw it.
$50,000. We would continue things as is, and we would provide proactive traffic enforcement and visibility to the township through that.
So, we're just here to decide what that no/no answer means, correct?
Right.
Okay, to clarify. So, and again, I don't feel, when I hear the chief deputy and the chief speak, I don't feel any sense of division between the two of them whatsoever. And I just feel like that's kind of being spun by other sources, because I don't feel that certainly either. But I've had people who live in the township come out to me and discuss it, and very, rationally too, and tell me things like, they don't vote for me, they don't vote for us, which is true, they don't. They vote for, the sheriff, but they don't vote for us, to make decisions for them. And they are choosing that is what they want. Does every single member of the township, every single citizen in the township think that way? I'm sure not. Just like every single citizen here doesn't think that way. We don't, but we need to make the best, we can't make a decision based on what every single person wants. So again, I believe the township has already rejected or chosen not to answer the proposal given to them, so we're just here to decide what that means. And to Shane's point, obviously, nobody wants anyone to be in a situation of life or death and people to say, well, that's too bad for you. And I don't think that is something that has come up in anybody's proposal. We've said clearly several times that life or death or asking for help is a completely different thing than an alarm where nobody's there, or something else that isn't life-threatening or isn't as serious. So I think, just to clear the air, we're not here to decide yes or no. We're just here to decide this is what the township has spoken and said that they would like, and we're here to decide what that means. Right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
I think that the police department and the county are two different departments that need to work together. I don't have a problem with city going into the township if it's necessary. It could be my daughter. It could be anyone's family member. So if it's necessary, we need to do it.
I think everyone agrees.
I keep thinking about the worst-case scenario, especially when it comes to you, Shane, you being on an EMT to an unresponsive person. Finding out that they need Narcan, and what kind of hornet's nest are you walking into? You need the backup. And this is where I think that we all got to come together and back our law enforcement on this, because this is a problem that's not going to be getting any better anytime soon. And I think once we start realizing that and moving into today's, the way the world is today, we're all going to be a lot better off.
I've walked into multiple houses where guns are sitting right next to the door, and we don't have an officer there. And I understand that you guys have a huge county to cover, and my biggest concern though, like I said, is okay, if we only do 45, but then you guys they respond to 45 calls, but then all of a sudden now you're gonna go back to your sergeants and tell them, now they have to say, give the approval for the cops to Painesville Police Department to respond or not. To me, now we're going backwards. We're going backwards. Because now I want to keep it the way everything is how the officers can make their determination off of how they feel looking at their CAD system where the other sheriffs are. And
Mayor, can I make-
forget about this entire meeting.
Can I make one quick comment? So we have what's called priority calls. In priority calls, now if Paul and I were having lunch at a restaurant and we get a medical where somebody is CPR, Paul and I are both going to go to that call. It's not going to be where I'm going to respond and I'm going to tell Paul, you can't go. Paul and I are both going to go to that call and we're going to take that. Any priority call, like I said, the domestic last week in Polk, it's a regular domestic, a misdemeanor domestic that ended horribly. We are going to rely on you guys for service, and based on what you guys have told me, unless something changes, we're going to continue to do what we're going to do. We're going to try to limit some of those non-emergent calls so that you guys don't have to respond to them. But emergency calls, we are going to ask you, and if we're not close, or even if we are close, we're going to request their assistance.
What do you determine on a non-emergency call? So if somebody
So-
fell.
Well, I have a suggestion here, quick. And this is just a suggestion, the council can decide what they want. You know, in terms of making this determination as to what things are appropriate, what things are not, how about, you know, Chief Deputy Miller, if he's got time, myself, or the sheriff and myself, we sit down, we discuss exactly what these calls look like, and then that way, you know, together we can discuss exactly where we think the importance lies, you know, for what calls, you know, their sergeant should approve, what calls their sergeants maybe shouldn't be having us go out to, and then we can bring that back to police and fire, and then police and fire can bring that back to the city council.
I think we should include the township on that also.
Well, they're part of the police and fire advisory board.
Okay.
I think that this is too big a group to make final decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And if we're gonna pay or anything, I would like it if you really came down with concrete figures, and after you've worked all your stuff out together and stuff, and then I or the rest of the Board of Supervisors can go to the township and ask, are you willing to pay this much? We can explain to our citizens, we're getting this service.
We did that, Butch. We brought
A different way you did, exactly. I'm just asking if we do this, a small group. That's all I'm asking. You know that I have been in favor of paying for some of it.
I know you
Always
have.
have been.
Yep.
I was not at that meeting because I was in Guatemala. So I wasn't there at all. But
And that's, I think the chief's frustration and my frustration from the annual meeting is we came with an agreement that the city was confident we could provide services without jeopardizing our response to city issues while benefiting both parties. And that was, the chief developed it, we looked over it, we discussed it at multiple police and fire meetings, and the response from township residents was simple. They don't want to pay for what they're already getting.
Okay.
They didn't want to pay
Okay.
$5,000. They
Okay.
didn't want to pay $10,000.
How many people from the township knew that this was going to happen at that township meeting?
I don't
It
know.
wasn't a meeting like tonight where it went out in the paper and stuff, and please show up if you have any opinion. If we would have had as many representatives of the township at that meeting, I think it would have been a whole different story. But you only had 5 or 6 people that were from the
I
township.
think we had 11 there from the township.
Pardon?
I think there were 11, actually, from the township.
11? Okay, but how many are in the township?
But on their behalf, they were told to come to that meeting with that document, and they did. So
By
it's
who?
up to the township to get the people there.
By whom?
And the
By your supervisors.
Did Steve?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you were on by Zoom at the meeting where we were told, come to the annual meeting and let's discuss. That was the directive we received, and that's what we did.
And that should have been in the meeting minutes, if there were any that went out to the paper about the township, about that meeting.
You don't,
I'm going to move us along.
from the township meeting are not
Yes, please.
in the
Yes.
paper at all.
We are,
They quit ever since that he didn't come to any of our meetings.
yeah, we're just,
Now we're going to be putting them all on the website. Everything. We've designed the website, we're paying money for it and stuff to have it so that we can notify the residents of the township about everything.
perfect.
And that's what we need to do.
Okay.
So you can get contact.
So I'm going to move us along. Genia, you've been silent, so I'll let you speak, and then Neil, I'll come down to you because you've also been silent.
Your patience.
I've been patient, I think so.
And then we're going to move along.
I don't have very much. I just want to say that I agree with Paul that they need to work it out as far as what calls they want to take from the county. And I want to leave it up to our chief's discretion to what he thinks they should go on. That's why we have a chief.
Okay.
And I don't want to tell them, don't answer anything but the ones they send you or something. I want to leave it up to him.
Good idea. All right, Neil.
Thanks for explaining the priority calls.
Yeah.
Neil.
First off, on Mr. Puppy's letter, he said, something about annexation of the whole township. That was never discussed or brought up at a council meeting. I remember him asking about police in St. Cloud, and I said we had an agreement. I didn't know the abbreviation, but, and it is possible, while we were both driving bus, we always had donuts and coffee afterwards, and things got discussed that sometimes I can blow smoke. And just to rile them up, I might have said, wouldn't it be great to annex the whole township? I'm not saying I didn't say that, it was 6 years, I don't remember. But if I did, I was blowing smoke.
I was there.
I was there. So,
If we need more tax money, we might as well annex the whole town.
anybody that knows me, I can be serious and very unserious.
No. No. I've never known you to blow smoke.
Well, okay. Some of our letters brought up kind of a fee-based system. And Butch has been talking, maybe we could pay a little, this, that. Our true cost, man and car, 150, 200 an hour.
75.
I will say right now, I am not in favor, nor would I ever support, granted, I don't only have an opinion on this matter, any sort of fee-based thing. It's impossible to quantify the amount of time that gets spent doing any of that stuff. It just is, between actually responding to the call, the report writing and everything else after any potential follow-up that there may or may not be, any potential court time. It's just, it would be an administrative nightmare for me to try and quantify that, and it's just not.
To charge for per hour basis. Because I was thinking that would be a fair way and only respond to the medical and county authorized calls.
Well, I'll tell you, the idea that I have, that I would like to see is, we know law enforcement agencies across the country are folding. And it's probably just a matter of time until we have to look at that as well. And I would like to see, as we look at how do we better pool our resources, not merging with like Belgrade or Eden Valley, they're too far apart to realistically patrol. But why can't we make a community police department much like our fire department, where different communities pay in and we patrol the area, almost like a subdivision of the sheriff's department. And I might be grossly oversimplifying or confusing thoughts, but my mind is, if we have a community, multi-township, multi-jurisdictional fire department, why can't we do a very similar thing with the police?
Don't you do that with Roscoe and Lake Henry already?
No,
No.
No.
but every city entity has different ordinances and stuff, and that'd be the difficult, but I suppose they're similar.
And part of those agreements would have to be an understanding on how ordinances are enforced, and that's something we've certainly discussed here. We'd have to do that. I'm not saying there aren't administrative hurdles, but somewhere down the road, I think if we look at the long-term outlook of our police department, that's where we should be looking. I don't like the idea of looking at a partnership with Belgrade. We already lost one squad to a deer heading home from Belgrade. So it's just too far apart, I think, to reasonably work out as a joint department. I know Cold Spring and Richmond have had their difficulties, and they're far closer than we are to Belgrade. So I would like to see that long-term, where we look at all of the jurisdictions around us and look at a system much like our fire department, but for the police. But for tonight, I guess I've heard from everybody on the council, everybody on the board in some manner. Doty, you've been conspicuously quiet, but I can see from the look on your face that I just better not open that can of worms.
Don't open the door.
I would like I think it's time, if the council's willing to make some sort of a motion on how we move forward. And I'm thinking on a motion of anything.
I got one thought, Sean.
Hold on just a second, Don, let me finish my statement. If there's a motion on, well, we're not gonna respond to anything, no matter what, or we're gonna respond to everything, no matter what, or something in the middle, like Gene said, probably keeping it to the chief's discretion, or only answering when called. But I think we've had a discussion. I'll go to Don for a couple minutes here, but then I think we're ripe for a motion so that we can keep this meeting moving along.
Sean?
Yes.
Gonna make,
Yep.
in regards to trying to get the police services like the fire in a, community aid to different departments, these departments get paid with insurance monies, where you wouldn't have anything like that with a police department. The person who has the fire pays for the fire, and that money is divided up to those who responded to the aid of the fire.
That's not so.
I don't believe the city collects any money for insurance.
Nope.
Money on fires.
I'm not saying the city.
Well, that's,
I'm not saying.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, the money that goes to the aid of these fire departments.
Oh, the 2% money or whatever that, yep.
Right.
ISO rating.
Right.
In our township, we pay for our fire service to the fire department and stuff. We can bill the person who had the fire. We can bill them, and their insurance company pays them. But we have to keep our budget below the total cost for the year, otherwise we cannot bill them.
Okay.
We pay that, but I don't know how that would work with the police force. I mean, who's going to be running it? I mean, right now,
All right.
if you buy a new truck, we all pay.
yep.
You tell us what the bill is gonna be.
So let's move this along. Let's go back to the discussion item here, so for the minute, purposes of the minutes, and Kristen, you've probably already figured this out, we're on old business A. Is any member of the council willing to make a motion on this?
I will.
Thank you, Paul, go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that the city of Painesville and Painesville Township meet with the purpose of an agreement with police protection for the township. And if anyone would like to add an amendment to that.
That's not exactly what we were trying to do, was it?
Okay, but there's a motion on the floor, so there's a motion by Thielen asking the city and the township to meet to discuss police services. Is there a second to that motion by the council?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second by Hertzberg. Any discussion on that? I agree with Gene, that's not quite where we were going, but I think it's related enough that I'm going to allow the motion to.
I guess if when they meet, they can decide what we're going to answer, which calls. If it's just going to be the emergency ambulance and fire and the calls that Stearns County says, or if it's going to be further. It sounded to me like at their annual meeting, they did not want any type of DWI or street enforcement. If that's what they don't want, we are not going to provide. That's not part of the financial agreement.
And I think that's where I'm at, and I appreciate, Butch, that you're willing to, you might be the lone voice out, but the answer from that annual meeting from those powers that be that were there, probably the biggest property taxpayers in the township, were not in favor of moving forward with anything.
Why would the biggest taxpayers in the county want to have their taxes go up then?
Then they voted for a $100,000 increase anyway. I don't know.
I know.
So,
To be fair though, Butch, it was like on my taxes, it would have gone up $25 a year. So we're not talking.
I'm just
Do you
saying.
have a further thought?
I just I don't want an argument here.
I'm not arguing.
But
You have a further thought, sir?
I just want to make it clear, if you guys, we're going to decide what calls Paul's going, that Painesville's requested. It's not going to be the township or you guys making that call.
Good idea.
We're going to be the ones that is making that call. And I just wanted Paul to be on board with that because I think he is on board.
Yes.
I'm confused. Who's meeting? What is this?
Well, and that was my comment is, why are they meeting with the township? They've already done that.
Yes, so,
And they aren't gonna, this is.
No, so hold on.
our decision, not the townships. They have nothing to do with this.
so I'm not, I just.
Hold on, point of order.
So,
Hold on. Kristen needs to take minutes. Her hand is
I'm running out of paper over there. I'm gonna get another tablet.
One other pen?
Her hand is going to fall off. We are not going to be hurting cats.
No.
We're going to be civilized. Jean had a comment. Megan, I know you had a comment. I'm going to go to you next, only because Jean had started talking before the second was made. So I want to hear from Jean, and then Megan, and then I will probably call a vote.
Well, my comment was that there's no, I did not see the need of meeting, the motion for meeting with the township and police. They've already been doing this. Our purpose is for us, for what we want Paul to do. Do we want him to patrol in the township? What do we want him to do, and how much of it? And my suggestion was to let it fall on his discretion, which calls to take. No, he'll take the ones from the county, that's a given. But 911, I mean, calls to the office or whatever. And that's the motion I was gonna make, but that's okay.
And I think I would like you to make that motion, because I am getting people telling me that we shouldn't do anything. So I just want it to be perfectly clear where we land coming out of here tonight. But that's not the motion on Megan.
No.
that was my question, because I was confused. I wanted a little clarification on the motion, who's meeting whom and where, and, I mean, if it's, you know, the sheriff and the PD talking about, you know, what they feel is best, sure, but the township, as far as I'm aware, that's why I asked for clarification, has already spoken. So, and whether or not that was communicated to a large amount of their citizens, that I believe falls on their board. Because if they want it to be published in the paper, and if they want a large amount of, they knew, the township board knew what that meeting was going to be about. And if, people in the township are not satisfied with that, which if I lived in the township, I certainly wouldn't be, but I would place my frustration where it belongs, which is on the township board who did not inform them.
Okay. So I'm going to be a no vote on the motion, not because I'm against sitting down for a meeting, but Butch, I would invite you, if you and the township supervisors can come to us with a proposal, even if it's just the framework of an outline, I will gladly sit down any day and have coffee, discuss it, whatever we need to do. But from my perspective, and I'm a no vote on it only because I think that discussion's been had, but if there's a renewed interest from the township, let's do it. And I'm all for it, but I'm opposed to this motion here tonight.
Could I offer an amendment?
Well,
No, let's vote.
Just wanted to include the words financial arrangement. Because we've already had a discussion, but nothing's been discussed with numbers.
it was part of the offer.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to call the question. The motion is by Thiel and seconded by Hertzberg to authorize the township and the city to meet to review services. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Aye.
Aye.
That motion being 3 opposed, 2 in favor, the motion fails. Again, I repeat my stance. If the township wants to renew something, I'm always happy to consider it, but we've done that. Jean, you said that you had a motion. Okay.
Well, my motion is that the chief of police meets with this county, and they figure out what calls they're gonna take. It's up to the chief and at his discretion to go into the township.
Okay. There's a motion by Soini, which I sense is basically keeping status quo, which is that the chief is going to, in his discretion, respond to calls in the township as appropriate. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Brick. Motion's by Soini, seconded by Brick, authorizing the chief to respond to any calls outside the city jurisdiction within his discretion. Any discussion on that?
If something does go wrong and, if people get what they're willing to pay for, I just hope that it's very clear publicly why that is, and that it doesn't fall on the shoulders of anyone who is just trying to do their job as best they could. So I don't know if the chief feels that, he needs to be, because it sounds like basically what both of you are saying is we're gonna help each other when we can, and we're gonna take the calls, from the EMTs and the fire department, and, if it sounds like a serious situation, we'll be there, which I believe is what has been happening, but, if it is something like, a road issue, or, I'm sorry, I don't know how you refer to them, but I hope that there's awareness of why those calls are not always being answered by the Painesville Police Department any longer.
Okay.
That's
I
it.
heard a comment from this end of the table.
I'm understanding that what Paul is saying, that if there's a genuine emergency or something, he's going to respond. He absolutely will, without a question.
Yep.
If it's a cat up a tree, I mean, that can wait. That can wait. Maybe some little person won't like that, but
He'll call my,
that's what I'm understanding. So this motion that is made now that's on the floor is for that it's simply up to Paul's discretion, or is it in conjunction with the county too?
I believe what Gene had said was that, like I had mentioned, we will discuss generally the framework.
Okay.
Yep.
In that case, I'm all for it.
I'm satisfied. I believe that what I've heard from the chief deputy here tonight is that we are addressing some of the concerns we had regarding some of the non-priority calls that.
I just maybe like the motion rephrased to say, to take the calls that the chief deputy and the police chief agree on.
Yeah, because they have a
that's
Not to be at our police chief's discretion, because that's where we are right now.
Well, agree on at the time.
No, because they have a new protocol that they're gonna
Yes.
discuss.
they're gonna have less calls.
If there's an emergency, and you
But
don't
if there's
have time,
others,
just calling around and make sure it's okay.
I don't think it's for us to decide what the calls should be. I think the people that are in these departments, whether it be Stearns County or Painesville PD, they're gonna make the call. We don't say, well, we're not gonna pay for it. We don't make that call. They don't make it, nobody else makes the call. When the call comes into the department, they respond to whatever the call is.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion. I've not heard a motion to amend. The motion on the table right now is authorizing the chief to answer calls at his discretion in the township. And I will say I am in favor of this only because I've heard of the change in protocols. I think that's going to address the citizen concerns that have been brought to my attention. I will add that, Chief, I'm going to be asking you about it in a few months and say, how's it working? And if I hear complaints, we're going to be coming back for another conversation. So that,
I will review monthly all our calls in Painesville Township also.
and if it proves that it's a moot point, fine, but I just need something. I think status quo is okay. I appreciate that our concerns have been heard. I'm satisfied tonight with what we've done. I hear what you're saying, Neil. I guess my perspective, I'd like to give this a shot and come back and see how it's working.
One question, okay, traffic enforcement, DWI in the township, or where's that gonna go?
So my guys, unless we're doing a TZD, something like that, or we're traveling between, the park and the city, they're not actively doing traffic enforcement out there. It's only within the city limits, and it's only when they're going out in those areas. Now, my guys, I will never tell them, if you see a car that's doing 20 over, or weaving, or a report of a drunk driver, to turn your head, turn down a different street. Because ultimately, it will eventually end up harming one of our citizens. Because that drunk driver will hit and kill a resident of Painesville if we just look the other way, so.
The same way with the chief deputy said 236 traffic stops. A lot of them might have been somebody speeding on 55, darted into Shady's or County 181. You have to pursue them and pull them over. That won't quit, will it?
No.
Good.
Okay.
Then I'm okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Once we've tried this here system out, what the deputy is suggesting and what Paul agrees with and stuff, let's take a look at this, say 3 months down the road, and see what kind of are the percentages that you are taking calls in the township, real figures of what they are. And he claims he can do it, and Paul can do it partly too. And then give me some ammunition to go to the township so we can have a vote of the citizens.
Didn't I make that motion?
Let's do,
No, that wasn't it.
Paul, let's do this. Because you have everybody's email. Can you send out an email to myself, Tarek, Chief Deputy, and the Sheriff, and say, can we set up a time to meet in July? Okay? And purpose will be discussing calls, things like that, how the response is going, and we'll just sit down and review, and then come back here and discuss. But if we can get a joint email going tonight or tomorrow, then it can get on all of our calendars before we plan summer vacations and things like that, and then it's there. And Dodie is expressing she'd like to go.
Do we have to?
I mean,
That was over the mic, wasn't it?
okay, I'm going to call the question on authorizing the chief to answer calls in the township at his discretion. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? Motion does carry unanimously. Okay, thank you. That is the end of our discussion on providing city protection services in Painesville Township. Going back on to the fire hall and emergency and elementary school parking. Shane, I would love if you stick around for this one too. So,
Paul just wants to talk, and I'm like, call me, but I'll stick around. Don't talk loud about parking.
oh, it's gonna be long, I'm sorry. Doty's asking if we can do a 5-minute recess. Yes, a bathroom break is a good idea. Let's come back at 8:10.
I want to make a motion that we remove Doty as the chair of this committee. These meetings are too long.
No kidding.
Hey, they were longer with Ted.
My third meeting.
If you wouldn't cause so many problems, these wouldn't be so long.
Change again.
I panicked at the last minute.
Well,
I
the
panicked at
table.
the last minute, but.
Well, you did it very well.
I
I
appreciate that.
You're out of that loop. Angela's not gonna get it.
No?
Oh, I got the short.
Oh, now, Mr. Mayor,
Probably.
now we can sit down and have coffee with people.
I know you don't, because you're not taking it.
Wow. I did that.
Help somebody.
Jay and Robert going on Sunday to get it. So, but I got those two.
Bring up the 7 dozen.
Yes, George. And after that, straight and then. You are. It's beautiful.
Okay.
But yeah, those two, I agree.
Why didn't you take it? Because you saw pictures and.
I don't need to.
We're taking it?
Oh, look, I didn't know I was supposed to sign that.
Did she get the leaves on?
Otherwise,
Yes.
I would have been all ceremonial with it. Yeah.
Pretty nice.
That's way nicer than I thought.
That's what Annette said.
Life fell.
So Jay, hasn't been in favor of it at all, anyway.
I had a meeting with my.
He wants it.
Whether or not she.
He didn't like me saying that Angela could have it.
I'd be my.
He didn't like that, he didn't like the fact that they took it out of space, he didn't like the fact that. it was
So when I got home, I
choices.
threw my phones on the counter. and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hang out with my
That's what
kids.
he's all.
He is
He wants to
gonna,
be in control of it. He's
So-
Sometimes that makes life.
he is gonna take the table to the, Center on Friday.
You should go get us Dairy Queen.
Yeah, so,
That'll work out good.
Annette said.
I'll
he
get a
took
couple
it to
boxes
that,
of
so-
deli bars.
So that's one thing.
I think those guys are drinking without me.
Are you go?
I bet they are. There's no going to the grocery store now.
Ask anybody that just.
I was-
Oh, here, Sam's not working.
Okay, the other thing I was gonna tell you, I'm gonna call Veronica, but I don't know if I'll get it tonight.
I'm just gonna tell you I'm not going.
I got a job.
Yeah, Sean.
I'm impressed. Neil got a new hat
For town
after 30 years.
They want, only
We
about
still have the
48.
tied hat.
Oh, I'm sure there's some.
She's done with school right now already at 8, so.
Yeah.
She's not going to cabinets.
No, I knew that. So then this weekend, she could maybe work on designs that she could send,
Sorry, Gene.
ideas.
Something.
Those things these are dangerous chairs.
I guess.
Fire out. I think that's what I mentioned.
Hey, you know what? At least Sean's mellow about it. Your mom's,
She's mean, huh?
well, she sounds like she's putting up her. Take my picture.
I am not.
Miss
Gavel, they're giving me shit about the gavel.
I don't know if I've ever watched her slam it around.
Not that much.
I need to pull mine out. Fire out.
Yeah, well, you know, after a while, you get used to Sean and just, when Mayor Pro Tem,
Or four, no, three.
For Monday, I'll bring my brass one
You can't.
Monday, what Monday?
for Monday's meeting.
For here or?
No, for the fire department.
Not here.
When are we doing there? Is that the?
Discussion.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah.
8?
Yeah, after your business meeting. Business meeting's at 6:30, right?
One after the meeting. I'll figure them out today.
hey, how did the mock drill go today?
Looked really good.
Was that filmed?
Who does,
Yeah, they filmed it off.
what grade
That's
is
the
it?
staff.
Is it for the entire school or?
No, just for the high school.
Oh, so like,
Nine through 12.
okay.
Yeah, so then we do it every 4 years, so at least every student gets to see once.
Yeah. Good.
We, almost ran out of time.
A for effort.
Helicopter was coming in before we went to the start to dig a little.
I had so many people ask me at work, do you know what's going on in school?
Oh, yeah.
Remember they did it to your Jeff?
Oh, wait, are you serious? Why?
Oh, I know.
Wait, what?
Okay.
That was for prom.
All right, as soon as Neil's here, we'll get started again. All right, calling us back
It's this weekend, he says,
Should not.
It's again this summer.
last week, 2 weeks ago.
Thanks, Andy.
The 4th through 6th is going already, right?
He's talking to his mother. This is important stuff.
That's intermittent.
That's, he wants to.
I was told to be more forceful with the gavel because that's what the cats need to hear. So talking about parking at elementary school. Andy, I'll let you talk about this, but I will share that my wife was there the last time it became a cluster, and for my wife to share that something was a hot mess, it must have been one hell of a hot mess. So what kind of a hot mess did you have going on over there?
So just to summarize everything real quick over about the last, I'm gonna say 3 months, we've had at least 5 calls that have happened either during let out or pickup. 1, I believe, during pickup, 4 during let out time. And it gets very congested when we're trying to get our response personnel to our parking lot, into the trucks, and then out without somebody being in the way. A lot of times, parents or grandparents that are picking up will park between the parking signs, and then we can't get a truck out of the fire hall. The bigger issue is probably our actual personnel that are responding to the fire hall can't get to the fire hall. They can't get through that intersection right there at Mill Street and Washburn. So that's actually probably been the biggest congestion that we've fought with. And the last one was we actually could get trucks out through that intersection. We had school personnel stopping the fire trucks. We had, because they were brand new, they were just 4th graders, I believe, going into it, and they were in training. So they were throwing up signs as people were trying to get to the fire hall and cross people. They didn't have any idea what was going on. That was part of the last congestion that we really struggled with. Currently what we're doing is when the fire trucks leave the fire hall, if we have a call during pickup, we are taking a left out of the fire hall no matter what direction the call is. So we're taking a left, going around the block, going to Senex, or I'm sorry, not Senex, but Casey's, and then we decide if we go left or right at that point. Normally, we would take a right out of the fire hall, go to the stoplight, take a right or a left at the stoplight. But we changed that after 2 calls ago. So the last call, we took a left, everybody went around the block, and that worked out very well. That's a big benefit as far as kid safety and everything else. We're not going through the immediate congested area. What was it, Ken, last week, 2 weeks ago? Last week, I think it was. We had a meeting about active shooter drill with the school and the board there. Ken is on part of that board, and he's on this board as well. We had a meeting there, talked about that, we can address that later. But after that meeting, we met with Cassie. It was Paul, me, and Ken and Cassie, and did Janet stick around? Janelle?
I think Janelle was there too, yes.
I think Janelle stuck around. But at that meeting, we discussed options on what could happen. And as far as Cassie's concerned, she's the elementary principal. Something has to be done. And she's all in favor and very supportive, and kudos to her. She's wanting to make some changes, figure it out, and we're gonna get it done before next school year.
That's what I was gonna ask.
And
School looking at a
our
different
biggest
pickup spot.
proposal, I think, right now would be to have it pick up on Stern Street.
Stearns and Minnesota in that corner.
The school's problem with that is we need the city's help, because the city piles all the snow on that sidewalk along the ball fields. And we do not have the equipment to get it off of there or the median in between, where the city does.
So would that have to be pulled into the, kind of like you do downtown?
Oh.
Yeah, so I would just say, just that street would be
Where's
really
Ron?
nice to go down and take the sidewalk and the berm and everything, blow it into a truck and haul it where you're hauling the rest of this.
Yeah. The few quick discussions I've had, and they've not been with Ron, I believe it was with Brad, and don't quote me on this, is he's like, yeah, we could probably do something like that. Yeah, obviously, he's not in a position to make that decision, but it seems like it is an option.
That could be on the Public Works agenda, and I think it's something we could probably address.
I would say that will be something, if this is a path we decide to take, that Cassie's wanting to go with, I would say yes, that would go down that route. And I'm assuming, I'm putting words into Public Works, but I'm assuming they would be more than willing to work with that and help with that at some point.
And if they really wanted to turn the corner and do the other streets, school would be okay. Especially after a year like this year.
Is that something where the school could use Safe Routes to School monies to purchase equipment?
Yes, who would do it?
Is there
Ken's gonna
something,
do it.
is there something like
He
that?
looks excited.
Yeah, I mean, we have the Safe Routes to Schools program, and could we use grant money from that to help the school purchase a snow blower?
Absolutely.
Is there any money in it?
So you guys need to talk after this
We have to
meeting,
apply
it
for
sounds
it.
like.
Yeah,
But they already have a snow blower?
It's through the
we
state.
do, but it's just not big enough.
Not for the.
We'd have to apply for that grant.
Yeah, we would have to. I'm
Well, the
just, I'm
school
trying to
would have
think
to.
outside the box, because I know,
Yeah.
you know, it's easy for us to say Public Works can do it, but with the last snowstorm that we had, where, you know, when they try and have downtown cleared by 7 AM, and it's noon and they're not even half done,
Makes it difficult.
it makes it difficult.
Is added
The
work.
time constraint could be,
But they don't, oh,
Yeah,
we only got so many guys.
we only got so many guys, we've
We
only
got
got,
the equipment, but,
yep.
right.
So that's why I'm just thinking, if there's a way, you know, can we help the school be self-sufficient in that regard through grant monies? Sure. I'm all in favor. If Ron can find a way to make it work and make it work well, yeah, let's do it. But, Neil,
Chief, if this goes through, how are you gonna signage or to close off the parking lot? And
Well, the kids just won't be there.
So, well, actually, we still would want to we still need to do some type of no parking in that parking lot. I don't know how that would work, I don't know how we'd put it together, I think that this board would figure that out and then present it to you as soon as we have a solution.
You'd want no parking at any time.
In the fire hall parking lot, absolutely, no parking at any time except for authorized emergency, response vehicles, or whatever you want to call it. The hard part is, it's a big parking lot, and it's all no curb, so we can drive in anywhere. You can't just put signs. Now you have a snow removal problem in the middle of the parking lot, now you gotta try shoveling around it and blow around it, and, there's gotta be ways, but I haven't gotten that far yet. The other thing we could do is paint the entire parking lot with stripes that said no parking inside those stripes at, certain areas. That's an option I thought of, and then Sean and I were talking about additional safety features, having a flashing light or something of that nature when we get toned out, to have a light that indicates that emergency vehicles will be leaving the fire hall. I didn't stumble across anything tonight digging through some of that, but that was an idea thrown out there.
I would be in favor of making that parking lot, and I don't know how we sign it. Maybe we take down your employment sign and we put up a sign that says no parking subject to immediate tow, and then have Grant sit there with his tow truck.
Yeah, but talk to Ron, he might have some ideas on how to do something like that.
As far as that thing on Stearns Avenue, if you go from Business 23 to Mill Street, a lot of school buses park there beforehand going in.
We were talking about having them go down, what's the cutoff street? So they'd come around, they'd come from like 55 over, and then that would be our main route, and then they turn down, what's it, Minnesota Street?
Minnesota Street is the one on the.
That comes up to the school, right?
Yeah.
Dead end.
And turn down that way.
Okay.
That would be the route that we were
Sure, okay.
trying to avoid the buses on the front of the school.
Yeah, you're talking about the parents picking up.
Yes.
Yes.
So you do have school patrol back there, because I used to
Yes.
drive.
Snow Patrol is,
Yes.
I'm in Minnesota, yes.
Yes.
Snow Patrol is already assigned there, they already have rolling now.
So
Yeah, that sounds better.
that's kind of what we had tentatively, this is all tentative.
Oh, yeah,
so
'cause you just
throwing
started.
ideas out and,
get something figured out for next
And
year.
then we're talking, you know, because kids drop off, the reason it's kind of over there is because they go to the playground in the morning. It's really not that much farther if we drop at the edge of that ball field. That's fairly close to the, you know,
Well, and there should, there's no parent pickup or drop-off going to the back behind the school. And people just understand that those signs are there for a reason.
yeah. So.
So,
The kids can go there.
I think there are a number of things.
Go, yeah.
We need to look at this in three ways as I'm seeing it. We need to deal with the immediate, we need to deal with the next school year, and then we need to look 5 years down the road. I think for the immediate, you know, the chief and I were talking about signs that would sound and flash when a call comes in. Sounding, if we can time it so it's only going off in that half-hour window when school lets out. Otherwise, we're gonna have really teed-off neighbors if it goes off for every call. But just some sort of a notification so that the school patrol kids know, okay, a fire call's coming in, like, we're gonna see fire trucks, we're gonna need to be like, people might be really upset if we tell them that they can't drive in this road right now.
You think they're gonna listen to?
Yeah, because fourth graders are gonna wanna see the big rigs coming out of the garage.
No, but I mean the parents parking.
So the next thing, so I think we need to look at signage for right now. We need to look at striping that parking lot, putting in no parking signs. I do think subject to immediate tow, because when the parents get out of their car and they go over to pick up their kid and Grant backs the tow truck up to it, they're gonna learn that lesson really fast, that they can't park there. And I know Paul's had some officers over there, he's been, you know, Logan's been over there educating people, I think it's been helping.
Yes.
But I still think,
The
you know,
cones have helped too.
the cones have helped.
Yeah, they don't go on the cones.
They don't go, oh, I saw one parked in front of the doors, the fire doors.
Yeah, he's a firefighter.
He has fire plates. That's Jason.
Picks up his child in there.
Yep.
Okay, gotta have some perks.
So, no, I think
Is there
we should look at,
anything that a citizen like me could do?
Put newsletters out to your township people.
He lives
Yeah,
in-
eventually, that would be probably a good idea, is some type of, once we have something established, the school will send out something to all the parents. But if we can just get the word spread out that this is an issue and this is why it's an issue, that's gonna be the biggest thing.
The school has been putting it in the bulletins for all the parents to see.
yep,
Yeah.
They have definitely been
Yeah.
sending it out.
it came out
Stop
again
parking in
this
front of the
today or
fire
yesterday.
hall.
Yeah.
It came out
I'm
again,
just
Jeff.
saying as myself or anybody else that wanted to volunteer to help
We'll
with
get you a bucket of paint and brush, and that'd be a great help.
That doesn't help much when there's snow over it though.
No, it wouldn't. The biggest, well, the city gets that parking lot cleaned pretty quick.
Yeah.
Pretty well, but you're right, it's the first initial snow and that packing, you probably wouldn't see that. But if you take that first 3 or 4 months before the snow comes and the parents know and the pickup is on the other side of the school, traffic is gonna be very minimal over there. The other thing to consider, and this is looking down the road a little ways, years past, we've only had 1 or 2 calls that have happened during these times per year. It's, I don't know what's changing or why, but 5 of them in the last 2 or 3 months is a lot, you know. Last year when it first came up, it was 2 or 3 times that I tried talking to Mary about it and getting something addressed. But that was not a major concern at that point. But Cassie sees it. I'm assuming bus drivers have reported back to her and said, this has gotta be an issue. I know the one bus driver right in the front. He went and talked to his wife and she talked to me and.
That would be our liquor store manager.
Yeah, that would be Bill. So,
Not always, he's only substitute. Oh, that's in the
Yes.
morning. He's-
But he was there.
He's always morning.
but he was there that afternoon and he said, that's scary.
Yeah, no, and
I go once a week.
I've thought about it a lot since Erica brought it to my attention, because I know she's walking through there with our 2 kids, and, I mean, she's had seizures walking home before, And I'm thinking, what in the world would happen if she had one during a fire call? I think we have to do something immediately, we have to do something for next school year, and it sounds like that plan's in the works, and we can keep talking about how we can partner together to figure that out. But I also look at it and I think long-term, we have fire trucks that are not getting smaller. We have a business coming in that's in all likelihood, I know we've talked about a ladder truck before, but we're gonna need a bigger one for the Nature Energy plant. Kids are on their cell phones, parents are on their cell phones, people are more aloof than ever. I think the only long-term viable solution is we've got to start talking seriously about a new fire hall.
5 years down the road, that'd be a great plan.
Because it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, we don't have the money's not there. One kid that gets hit, and I guarantee we would find the money then.
I would say right now, it doesn't matter if it's now or 10 years from now, you're still not gonna have the money.
Yep.
If you're just putting it away.
17 years I've been on the department, that's what we've been hearing over and over and over. 5 years, 5 years, 5 years.
It's just gonna be a matter of making a decision. It's time to move forward, see what we can find for grants, see what's out there.
Start
How
planning.
much, when can we bond it, when can we not? And then set a date in stone that this is the spring we're gonna start construction.
I would like to, Andy, I'd like to figure out if we can call a special meeting of the townships and all the other government entities that are part of the fire department, along with bringing in Lisa Damuth and Jeff Howe, and having a meeting over there at the fire hall and showing these are the problems that we have, because you need to put a visual on it. You need to have people see, like, this is the problem we're running into.
Can we have that meeting at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
I'm all for it.
That's what I think would be best. I was gonna suggest too.
Meeting starts at 2:50?
Hey, and all I'm saying is that if Paul threw some lighter fluid and a match into a garbage can downtown at that time,
Don't be saying that.
You're being recorded, Mayor. Stop it.
It's still arson. So if you're gonna do that though, you're gonna have to do it soon. In our conversations, and sorry I missed the first part of this, but in our conversations with the school, the elementary principal intends on moving the pickup and drop off next year.
Yep, we had that discussion.
Yes.
yeah. No, and I think that's, I mean, I love that for next year. I think that's going to take some of it away, but we're still gonna have kids crossing there. We're still gonna have kids on that playground. We're still gonna have kids biking up and down that street. I think it's time to get real before it happens.
I've been saying.
I think, given especially, you know, with the accident that occurred last December before, I don't know. As I said, it's been a long day. We were just lucky that that occurred when it did.
Fence,
Yes.
what you're talking
That occurred
about.
when
Oh,
it did,
fence,
because anytime the kids are on the playground and they see a fire truck, they're right there. And had they been right there that day, well, it's, yeah.
That was in the summer, wasn't it?
No, it was December.
It was November.
It was
December.
in the spring. No, it wasn't December.
Yes, it was.
Not when they did the fence.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was December, I
Because I
recall.
thought there was no school.
No, it was in the middle of the night, or I mean, late at night.
Oh, that's right.
Because I went trucking through
I thought there
the,
was no school.
yes, it was at nighttime, and, but it was snowing and raining at the same time.
Yeah.
So it was December, but anyway, so, and it's putting aside a new fire station aside, which I think is, you're right, we should have a meeting very soon. We did talk as part of the Safe Routes to School program as well about different things that we could do as parents at the school with carpooling and with, you know, and there are many kids who live close enough to walk home, but not by themselves. So we've talked about, I think Safe Routes to School calls it a walking taxi or something like that, where there are parent volunteers where it's like this group of children walk home with this adult and, you know, things like that. So there are definitely things we can look at from a parent perspective and a school perspective, but Minnesota climate being what it is, that's not going to be possible year-round. So I think meeting as soon as possible is definitely for the best.
Don't we have a meeting in August or something with all the townships?
Yeah, but there's no school kids to show how dire the situation is.
Well, that's soon enough, isn't it?
Usually it's August, we'll have a meeting with them.
Not if we want to show them what the problem is, though, because there won't be school.
My only concern, I mean, if we want to have a meeting to invite in our legislators, and I think we do, reason being, I think we're going to need some state bonding for this. So we need to get their support for it. They're a little busy until the end of May. or-
Yep. I was gonna say they're in session.
Yeah, and their workload's not getting lighter. Lisa and I were texting until after midnight the other night, so it's hectic for them.
Moving on.
But what can we do immediately? I'd like to see signage go up. We talked about parking. I think if the council wants to make a motion on that. One of the other things we talked about at the safety meeting, and Chief, I know we talked about it, Andy, I don't remember if we talked about it, but making all of Washburn between Main and Mill a no parking zone. I think all of 4 or 5 cars are going to be inconvenienced, because you can get, 3 there between the corner and the no parking sign, and then there are 2 that...
What about where the gazebo's at?
I think there are only like 2 or 3 cars that park down there. But leaving in the parking spaces at gazebo, but any of the like street parking, make it no parking zone.
So would that be the exemption of firefighters though, because we do use Washburn?
Let's say we park on the street all the time for all of our vehicles when we respond. We'll fill up almost that whole side right between the front of the school to the sign, and then probably 2 or 3 cars after that, and then actually in front of who is it, Stain?
Yeah.
Right in front of their place, we park 3 or 4 vehicles usually on the street.
Who, Sean, isolating it during those hours where we knew it was gonna be a problem. So like no parking between 2:30 and 3:30, you know, when they're doing the pickup and stuff like that, so that we knew it would be.
Well, I guess I wouldn't mess with those signs now, with school out in a month, and them looking at a different pickup place next fall. I don't think you need to close off the street.
The other thing is, during the daytime call, typically we'll have anywhere from 8 to 12 cars that'll be showing up for our daytime call. So it's not 26 firefighters showing up at one time. Not like a call at 7 in the evening, you know? But, so I guess I don't see a real need to limit street parking during those hours, I guess. I think it just might be more of a headache for PD and everything else, and, well, was this a firefighter's car? Did they get to go out? And obviously, they'd probably know. They would just give us a ticket, because I probably made Paul mad that afternoon or something. Tow it.
Well, I mean, the question I was going to have is, I know that you're eligible for firefighter plates, but I don't think you have to have them, do you?
Correct.
Does anybody not?
There are several that do not.
Some of them drive company vehicles.
Oh, yeah, that's true, because,
And some are driving the wives' vehicles.
yeah, I mean, during the day, Brad will often park his city truck there.
Right. Or he'll just drive a sweeper over.
I would like to see ours show that.
2 miles an hour.
Fastest response time ever.
towed.
But, I mean, I don't want to, me personally, I don't think it needs to be real extreme.
Okay.
I think, obviously, safety is first. I'm not going to change our policy when we leave during those times. We're still going to take a left, because that, to me, is just obviously safer. Yes, it will add additional time to certain calls, but like I had said to several people already, 30 seconds to a minute typically doesn't matter. It can be life or death during certain calls, but typically it's not a critical issue. You know, we're going to a grass fire, it doesn't matter. You know, even a house fire with everybody out, what are you going to save? A little bit of property. It's not that critical.
Given the risk of the alternative.
Yeah, yes, I agree. But now if we have a cardiac and we're sending a truck out because we're the first one to respond, and, you know, that sometimes will make a difference. But that's if we get called out before those.
Like the last one was.
Or a car accident, major car accidents at times make a difference too, so.
I guess I'm still of the opinion that the risk probably outweighs the benefit.
Yes, most of the time, I 100% agree. It's very few times that it would really make a difference going through traffic. Because realistically, you're going through there at a snail's pace with all those kids, with all those cars, and you're waiting for somebody to get out of your way. It's almost easier just to go around the block.
Do you need a motion from us on the parking?
Well, if we need to spend money on paint and some signage, I guess, do we need motion for that, or do I just go ahead and work with Public Works and put it on our budget?
Tarek, don't you have to,
He left.
you have the ability to spend discretionary monies, right?
Yes, he does.
Yep.
Okay,
No, you don't need a motion then.
nope,
So
I think
work with Tarek and go from there, and
work with Tarek and go from
Well,
there.
a lot of that can just go through my budget for building fund too, so, although I just spent some of that. but,
Yep. And I think if
All
you're,
of that.
Yeah.
that's an area where if you go over budget, I'm not gonna fault you the next budget cycle.
I don't tell you guys when I go over budget anyways.
Well, Linda does.
The budget's only a budget, it isn't,
Good guess.
What do you need from us in terms of a motion tonight to change anything?
I don't know if we need a motion for anything really, do we?
I don't think so
I
either.
don't think so.
But yeah.
Yeah, is anybody gonna make a motion to build a new fire hall?
And in that budget, add the ladder truck.
No. Andy doesn't want one.
Not that I don't want one.
Yeah,
A lot of responsibility.
Is there anybody sitting here at this table, committee, police and fire committee, council, who thinks it is not time, that it's premature for us to be talking about a new fire hall?
Oh, I thought we should be talking about it 10 years ago, so.
I'm thinking more about the fiscally conservative one at the end of the table.
I think we should know what our budget is.
It's always a funding,
In 3 years.
always a funding issue, but if we can get grants and some help,
Yeah,
it sure don't hurt to talk about it and explore it.
I think it'd be great to set up a meeting, try to see what our options are. Are there grants for that, or how much is that grant worth? How much is the building gonna cost us? Is it gonna be 3 million, or is it gonna be 6 million? And what do we want out of that building? Is it gonna be PD and fire? Is it gonna be just fire, or are we gonna be? Yeah.
And where?
Next to us?
Things are not getting cheaper.
And I know, Chief, you want to do like an underground layer, right?
I need the back cave.
Yes, okay.
I do think that said meetings should be at a time when they can understand what we're working with.
Yeah.
So,
No,
and given that with the snow days, the school's extending into June now, we should have some time to pull something
If
together.
it can happen, I'll make it work for my schedule.
Okay.
Just not end of July to 1st of August, I'm gone.
I think the city should.
3 weeks he's gonna be gone.
Working at building it into a storm shelter.
I get to watch.
Agreed.
I think that is going to be one of the best attributes for funding for us.
Yep.
Especially with some of the
And then you can go through FEMA.
Yep, that's what we do with the ballpark, and I agree 100%.
FEMA monies.
Okay, well, that's, that needs to go on the police and fire's next agenda. You're welcome, Dodie. See, we're doing so many things under your blessed leadership.
I'm just really good at spending money.
Okay,
All of us on kind of.
moving on then, we talked about whether or not you had any active or any interesting calls. How'd the active shooter drill discussions go? Ken? I heard you were at the meeting, so I'm looking to you.
Really good, actually, and the school is, they're under the same as Paul, where, Janelle does not want to scare anybody that doesn't want to participate in it. And we are actually moving forward and trying to figure out what our best plan going forward is for any emergency response, the whole system, PAs throughout the whole school. You guys were in on that too. So we had a meeting this morning on it again. So PAs are coming up a lot because the school's kind of behind on that with things. It's old system.
Yeah, you can't understand a thing they say.
Yeah, so we've been working with that. You guys obviously came up again. We got another meeting scheduled, I believe, right? Yep, May 3rd, right around the corner. So we had done a lot of discussions on that. So, a lot more to come after May 3rd here in a week.
Our next steps, May 3rd, we're having a meeting.
With?
We're supposed to be bringing in some of the people that we're targeting or looking at as far as trainers. From the public safety side of things, we have identified that
we will have this done and, you know, our training done by the end of the summer before school goes back into session. We've talked about what it looks like from the school side of things, from the PD side of things, and emergency response. And then it may be separate, it may, you know, be a hybrid type scenario. But then at that point, we'd all come together at the end so that, you know, we knew what capacities and capabilities were across the board.
Okay.
So,
Just make one suggestion based on the mock crash today. We should get signs that say training that you can put up by the road so that people don't have many heart attacks.
I thought it was awesome. Anyway,
It came quick.
yeah, one other thing that, the county's actually coming in because we're talking about adopting their program that they've been going with a few other schools. And I think, Stang brought that up, right?
yeah, so
Yes,
as it sits right now, there's a trainer with the county who does Alice training. We're gonna sit down at the third meeting and essentially interview them. You know, fire has their list of things that they're looking for. We have our list of things. We wanna make sure that any training that they do fits. From my perspective, I'm looking at, you know, I've got a 10-minute to 15-minute window before I get anybody here. The reality is, if we ended up with an active shooter anywhere in town, I have one officer, maybe if I'm lucky, 2 officer response to that. So, you know, we're looking at that, we're looking at, you know, the transition points with these guys coming in. So we're gonna interview them and find out, does their training accomplish what we're looking for, or do we need a different trainer? So I think we at least have him coming in, if not a second person coming in as well, just to talk with them and see what they offer.
Okay, all right, great. And then lastly on our agenda is the Night to Unite event, and Doty's got her proverbial Bible in front of her.
Yeah, the inflatables are going to be there. It only took them about 6 weeks to get back to me. But there was still more question on funding and food and so forth, so that should be set up here in the next month.
Okay.
Well, from the funding side of things, we'll be fine this year.
Yes.
We still should have roughly $3 grand in that account.
Okay.
So for, you know, purchase of food and stuff, we should be okay.
Okay.
If we subsequent years, that could be a major problem. Unless Ken made any headway.
Well, that grant is in here too.
Yes, the grant is in there. The account is currently at $2,669.61. Because I had Belinda look it up when I met with Randy Schaefer. And hopefully the grant, Randy has not gotten us a decision yet, but I did explain what it was for. It seemed like, the impression I got was that it fit with their mission and that they would be open to at least funding Night to Unite. So I'm hopeful for that. We don't know if there's going to be enough funding to fund the other things, but we had requested $1,500 for Night to Unite, $1,500 for DARE, and $1,000 for Shop with a Cop. So I think based on my conversations with him, I'm hopeful for at least that $1,500 for Night to Unite. And that would cover the cost of the food and the things like that. And then the next meeting, we'll coordinate volunteers and everything else. Okay.
We'll tidy everything up in the May meeting.
We still have three months.
Yes.
We want to get some more advertising out and discuss that at the May meeting.
That's it.
Don't get too much. Food's hard to buy for that. Trust me, I know.
I think that, if someone asks Quick Trip, they give you all one.
Okay. All right, it being 8:44, is there any other business? Please, nobody say yes. All right, then we stand adjourned, everyone.
Just see if anybody says
Yes.
yes.
Kristen gives a big sigh of relief.
Sure, let's work hard. I said she's gonna get overtime.
Here, this is your,